Good evening, all. Welcome to this week's edition. Oh,
Somebody
that's DK.
explode.
Somebody explode.
No, I just coughed. I just coughed.
You just went pop. Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Midweek Geek. You all know the drill by now. It's where we sit around in a happy ring and shout at each other and not pay attention, and hopefully people come away with something constructive by the end of it. We have Halakar in chat. DK's been in chat, but he's here in this stream now. Echo's in chat. There's 10 people in chat in total. So hello, chat, and hello, panel. Hello, Brian James. Good evening, DK, Majors Musings, Elfmate, and Saxius. Kids here in chat as well. We will get through the Dual Lumens here. Ranger Lemura's here as well. Good evening, people. We'll get through the usual sort of recap of what we've been up to for the last week or so, and then we'll dive into the topic. Hello, Crafting Gamer. Obviously, this week, I've put it out there quite a few times. This week is the second anniversary of my channel being created. For the first month it existed, it only had one video, which was a somewhat dodgy review, which I will re-record at some point with a proper script, so it's a bit more listenable and a bit more watchable. But aside from that, with all the, I've done a few streams, done videos, that sort of thing, but have played a bit of gaming. I've done a bit of gaming as well. Thursday was Shadow of the Demon Lord, but I'll leave Saxius to explain that one. On Saturday, we played a bit of MERP. Second session in a row in our MERP campaign with no combat at all, but they're getting somewhere. They went on a barge trip down the Brandywine and arrived at Ford Hall, Sarn Ford, and we're poking around trying to discern sort of the lay of the land and the people there, and because it's a bit of a frontier, and they met some interesting people, and then we played Odyssey of the Dragon Lords on Monday, which has got better. It's got better in the last couple of sessions for me, certainly for my character, and one thing that will annoy old schoolers here is that my party of 5 level 4 characters managed to take down an iron golem by firing and running away, and firing and running away.
It's a deserved victory. It's a deserved victory.
We worked out that the golem only attacked whoever had interfered with the contents of a tomb. So we had whoever interfered with the contents of the tomb continually running away, and everyone else was just going pew, 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 pew until the event was eventually taken down.
But my special monster. Don't care.
So hopefully lots of XP for next session. Anyway, that's been... and obviously I had one of my most successful streams yet last night. The one where I was getting everyone putting... modules into the tiers on those tier websites, and it was a bit sort of last minute. I've got 30 people watching. That was really good. In fact, it's one of my most watched streams ever within the first 24 hours.
Gaming the algorithm. Gaming the algorithm.
Oh, I wasn't gaming the algorithm, no, but already it's had a lot of people watching who weren't on the stream. So the streams don't normally do that, and that's been great. That was great. That's been great. So all good. DK, you played any games?
We restarted Line of Dragon.
Right.
I'm running it again. Yeah, so they're liberating Agincourt from the filthy frogmen. And whether I mean the French or the frogmen, I leave up to you. Saved a bunch of women, killed a weird demonic experiment to breed half frogmen, half humans. Smashed up some eggs, saved the mayor's son. It was great. They found a cursed magic item. Now they have to figure out what it does.
Cursed items, properly old school, good stuff.
Yeah.
Mage?
So yeah.
I just had a 5-day stretch of gaming.
Oh,
jeez.
quality.
Yeah,
Ooh.
Friday night
I don't
was
know.
my OSE, the one that I run bi-weekly. They had, and with a guest appearance by a scenario created by Elfbait and given to me.
Oh, quality.
Saturday, I played in my niece's fiance's game. He's discovered Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and he's now trying to merge it with Old School Essentials. Not saying I totally love the result, but let him experiment. He's young. Sunday was Team Evil, the Night Below game, and their intrepid leader led them on a very doomed mission. It was quite the result. A lot of fun.
How messy did the bodies get?
Okay. They went in with an army of about 15 to take on a ranger, and they retreated with 3 survivors.
Wow, that's what a 75% casualty rate.
Yeah, the 3 leveled PCs. Everybody else and the level 1 PCs just wiped out.
I'm looking forward to the
wow.
video. I'm looking forward to seeing Ace-Eric narrate that.
Yes, could be interesting.
That reminds me of Aaron's cobalt meat grinder. Yeah.
Well, that was the ranger and his associates in Night Below. Well, they weren't expecting. Well, I don't want to spoil it because the episode will be forthcoming. But Monday was my 5th edition game that I run for my remote friends, and so that was good. No casualties there. 1 near casualty. I do run sort of old school, and hit points are at a low, so they do have to watch themselves. But that was good. We lost a player because he's in Oklahoma. His real life group moved to Monday night, so he had to back out of the online game. And lastly, last night was an OSE game that I play in. Was actually the campaign that turned my attention to OSE in the first place. It was about a year ago. It's when we started. I wouldn't have even thought about OSE. I was like, I play D&D, and I have all the Beckme stuff. I don't need to get into OSE. And then, I don't know, just caught the bug. So we played that. That was fun. Almost leveled. Made my acrobat almost level 5. A few hundred XP away. So I have to say, I don't mind the acrobat class in OSE. It's not terrible. But and yeah, that was my there's the Coles Notes version, Spark Notes version of my gaming for the past 5 days. Now I need a break.
So you have a break here talking to us. And Saxius.
Right, so we had Shadow of the Demon Lord, where we continued with the delving into the coal mine. You had disguised your steampunk clockwork friend to be a mutilated, flesh golem, and you managed to convince some of the other creatures, or the chain-bound as they're called, that you were one of them, although one of them decided that they was going to rip off one of the dead arms of the cadavers that was dangling from the metallic thing, while they tried to then swallow it whole, and you all sort of tiptoed away. You found and harassed, borderline psychologically tortured, a scribe that was just there doing his job until things just went crazy. This was a repeating thing throughout the session until finally later in the game the NPC saw an out and took it and ran.
He left town with all of his stuff and a chicken on his head.
Listen, I think I can summarize our sessions very nicely with Gingerbeards. We somehow managed to top the insanity that was last week, and we're continuing to do that. That's possibly the best way of sort of describing the sessions. It just the antics keeps on going up, the rules keeps on getting more insane, and the logic becomes more twisted. Anyway, you come eventually down. Shenanigans happen, magic happens, that causes confusion amongst the goblins. One goblin disappears, but he doesn't disappear really, and the other one notices that he's gone and goes looking for him, but the guy who disappeared, but not really, actually returns. But does he? We don't know. And then suddenly you meet up after the harassing of the scribe. You come down, you find the heart, wonderful. You try to pick at it, and you realized, oh, maybe not a good idea because sonic booms are literally knocking us on the ground. So you eventually get it, and then you start to basically make your way out. You realize you're being attacked by what, who, what, and where. You have no idea, but you just run. Your clockwork friend is being peppered by bone daggers. Again, from where, we don't know. And while he's doing this, he's having to hold this heart that's basically like 4.5 feet big, wide, and it is hot like magma. So, the skin of the charred cadavers that's around him is being nicely, barbecued. And you have to literally crawl around to try and fix him while you're under fire by all of these attackers. Again, we have no idea who, what, when. You make your way back to town, you hand over the heart, and then you point at the wizard who hired you and went, "Are you evil?" In which case he goes through the lengthy explanation of trying to dumb down his knowledge to your knowledge that no, he's not evil, he's just doing a bad thing against bad people to do good. And because he needs you, he needs someone else who is a bad person to do something even worse, and it would risk your lives being forfeit, and you don't have immortal souls that he refers to as lights and candles. I believe most of you basically now believe that, yeah, he's not lying to us, but we're not entirely sure. But we still have a job. That's the important thing. We have a job.
We know he's using the miller's mother-in-law to do something.
Anyone who's not listening into these sessions will not understand the absolute insanity and the lengths of logic that the players go to pick a miller, a random NPC, have him be married to a monster that they meet out in the wilderness because it's the closest thing to a woman that they've met in this entire campaign, and then just go like, this is the miller, that has got to be his wife, meaning that the other woman that we're now meeting in this entire campaign, that has got to be his mother-in-law, and this mother-in-law...
Nobody said goblins were smart.
No, but they have average intelligence by their statistics, but God!
Clearly not the desire to use it.
As John said, I am smart by experience, not by logic. I am not dictated by who, what, where, when, and why.
You can lead a goblin to logic, but you can't make him think.
A goblin is cunning. A goblin is cunning. He is not academic in the least.
Anyways, to make matters worse, now that they've leapt this massive leap that the hag that lives in the river is actually married, or her daughter is married to the miller, making her the mother-in-law to the miller's wife's... Yes, that. They basically decide that, okay, we're going to help the wizards because the mother-in-law is going to try and disrupt the negotiations by having hobgoblins and elves show up. We can't have that happen, and we don't like elves because...
hobgoblins, nah.
Literally, it's not even because of elves, it's just because, hobgoblins. That's our competitors. We don't like competition. So, true to their nature, the players go back, and General Nuts decide that I am going to go and do a rousing speech, which leads to a mixture between a lynch mob, a circus, and a family outing from the goblins as they go to take on the hobgoblins. It's an odd thing I had to describe. So it was about 20 hobgoblins that showed up against 400 goblins. The hobgoblins died, but they took down a lot of goblins with them. Then the players were encountered by an elf, and I got to introduce the fact that elves have this wonderful thing that means that they charm you, and it doesn't matter whether you're resistant to charm, you will be falling under their spell. And the players had to then break that spell. And how did you do that, John? Tell me, how have you managed to kill what is effectively a powerhouse of an NPC monster? What did you do to encourage this?
I just remember sitting on top of Awakened with my. I was sat on his shoulders with my sling, and I told Awakened. What did I told Awakened something that really riled him up about the elf. I can't remember what it was, but we charged him, and Awakened critted and turned the elf into paste.
So you said that elf right over there is hurting his friends, his only friends.
Yeah.
There were people who woke him up from the deep slumber that where he had been stuck for God knows how many years, and he was now hurting them. Awakened, taking this as a personal offense, immediately ran up there, did a critical. He was doing 3d6 in damage already. That doubles up to 66. The elf has got 21 hit points. And what happens when you've got two players both rolling 12, because I gave them the 3d6s each to roll, you get 24 hit points. You get an elf that is just picked up and smushed until he's nothing but
Paste.
Red paste.
Elf
And
paste, yes.
that was the end of the session. It was just you guys leading a absolute slaughter. General Nuts declaring himself a cleric, bringing forth the belief that the big black cauldron that is within the Goblin Barn is now a holy item, and we must worship it because food comes from it. Life comes, life giveth, and like everything is put in the pots. We don't ask questions for what is in the pots.
Every time Saxius explains a session of this, the more I want you guys to fucking die.
That's fine.
Oh,
Anyway.
the thing is, as well, in this campaign, we have managed to introduce the concepts of capitalism, society, and now freedom to the Goblin Barn. So goblins now have the concept that they might be free.
They have freedom there.
Oh.
Yes. I have already rolled to see what the outcome of this is, so I think we're going to start off the next session very interestingly. Because there's been a few times where the lords had to come to the barn and be like, "Hi, goblins. Yeah, we normally ignore you, buds. We can't now. So you're going to have to like suffer for a bit, as they either beat you or they just say, we need someone to be held responsible. Who are we going to hang? You pick amongst yourself." That usually ends in the players making it worse.
Of course. Anyway, shall we get on to the topic?
Yes.
Yes.
We have a
few
people have joined chat while we've been waffling away. James, Squirrel, L, Captain, a Shadow and Sun, and R.W. Bishop. Hello all. Right, tonight's topic. As you're probably aware, we've been going through a sequence of dives into the history, the mechanics, the inspiration, the lore of traditional D&D type classes. And we've gone through the major classes. We went through fighters on one stream. We went through clerics and druids. We went through magic users and illusionists. We went through thieves and assassins. But when we did the fighters one, we didn't get as far as talking about the other types of fighter, such as the paladin, the ranger,
the barbarian, the cavalier.
You got
he said work was pulling him away. He had to.
Right.
Yeah. He has said that normally Elfbait's able to sort of be in while he's at work. Shh, don't tell his boss. But I think he's the only one working today. So
yes, he is.
A bit more to do than usual. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get too much of Elfbait tonight. So my plan on this particular topic is to take each of those fighter type classes in turn. Okay. So that means when we start discussing paladins, I don't want anybody diverting into rangers and other things. Just off on a tangent.
I back paladin.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, we're doing paladins first. And I want to go through the history in sort of a chronological order as well, which means we're going to go through versions of D&D and then other games afterwards. So let's just try and stick to that sort of framework, because it's the only way we're going to get through this. It's the only way.
3 definite classes from all editions. Yeah.
Let's start.
So, Paladins. The Paladin, that originally lawful, and then lawful good, holy fighter that first appeared in OD&D, I believe, in the Greyhawk book.
Yep.
Although I don't know the mechanics of it from there, and I don't know what it had in addition to the fighter, because the first I knew about Paladins was in AD&D. So, has anyone got any OD&D experience with that Paladin from that book?
I have Swords and Wizardry. It's fairly faithful, but I don't have my OD&D stuff on my phone. But I can get the Swords and Wizardry version.
Yeah, yes, I know Swords and Wizardry is quite faithful to OD&D. So yeah.
The Swords and Wizardry version of the Paladin states that they must be of lawful alignment. Mm-hmm. They have magical items. Their magical items are: they may only have 1 suit of magic armor, 1 magic shield, up to 3 magic weapons, but they may own no more than 4 additional magic items. Paladins can use any magic items that can normally be used by fighters. They must give to charity. They must donate all treasure to charities or temples associated with the lawful alignment. Paladins will not work with characters other than those of lawful alignment unless ordered to do so by a superior officer of the Paladin's order, or by a lawful prince or high priest of a lawful temple. They gain divine favor, which means they have better saving throws. They have lay on hands, which means they can heal 2 points of hit points per level once a day, or cure a disease. If the affected person suffers from more than 1 disease, only 1 disease is affected per 5 levels of Paladin experience. The Paladins themselves are immune to diseases. They get a war horse at 4th level, I believe. Doesn't at any level. My apologies. In this version, later versions, I think it's 4th level. However, it's a 5-hit die creature. However, if it is killed, they cannot gain another one until 10 years of in-game time has elapsed. They can dispel evil at 8th level, as per the dispel evil, whether the clerical spell. So see the clerical dispel evil spell. They can detect evil, as per the clerical spell, up to a range of 60 feet. Notice that these are both not once per day use. They are at will. They can create a stronghold at 9th level.
It all sounds almost identical to AD&D first edition.
The only difference is they have D8 hit die rather than a die 10. Mm-hmm. They do not have turn undead, and they do not have spells. That is introduced in advanced.
Right.
But other than that, it is a 1-to-1 thing to AD&D. It's apart from the magic and the turn undead, it's virtually the same.
Okay, so yeah, I mean that does that's very much the framework for the AD&D Paladin. Of course, they got turn undead as per a cleric 2 levels below, and they got, was it level 9? They started getting cleric spells. Roughly.
Level 9, they got spells.
Yes, it's 9. Yeah.
1 cure disease once per week per 5 levels. 2 hit points. 2 hit points per day. Lay on hands per level. The little war horse, the permanent protection from evil. That's the big game changer for the Paladin. Protection from evil, 10-foot radius.
Yeah. I'm going to give my opinion now of the Paladin class based on my experience from AD&D. Mm-hmm. My biggest problem with the Paladin class was down to the type of players that it attracted. The big problem with the class is if you have, rules as written, if you had a Paladin in the party, it was the first class that really forced other players to potentially change what they were going to play.
Yeah.
Because the Paladin was so restrictive in terms of what the Paladin was allowed to travel with, to associate with, that
Assassins were out.
Yeah. And all bar any evil characters.
Any evil characters, monks. Certain monks were gone. A lot of bards were gone.
A lot of thieves were gone.
Druids were absolutely gone. Absolutely gone because they're all true neutral.
That's not necessarily true, but I mean, if you go into the letter of the book, the paladin can travel with neutrals on a one-shot basis.
Yeah,
really.
In a campaign, it makes it difficult.
It's difficult to campaign. The idea behind that rule was designed around the way they played at the time, the club play, where people would show up with their characters, and you didn't know who you would be traveling with at any given game night. It'd be like, hey, I got my paladin. John, do you got your ranger? Yeah, let's go on an adventure together, right? Whereas it's like, oh no, Saxius is playing an assassin. We don't want you, Saxius, right? But you do that literally nightly. It wasn't that you had the same core 6 players.
It might be Saxius. Have you got your cleric with you this week?
Yeah. Have you got your cleric? The good one, that is, not that worship.
Not the lawful evil. Yeah. No, Asmodeus one. We want that. We want Lathander tonight, but this is
the problem is in my experience we never got to play
any good players. I'd be showing up with a proper character selection.
But I have a question. L, although tongue-in-cheek said this, he says tonight's topic: why paladins are useless and paladin players are the worst gamers. Maybe the latter might be true, but I don't think the paladins are useless. They're fairly powerful.
Beasts. They're beasts. We'll debunk L's assertion in a second.
Right.
But yeah, in terms of play style, if you're playing your standard, home game, same group, you can be a little more lax in terms of the paladin's restrictions. The first thing to note is, of course, the paladin doesn't automatically know what the player knows. You've got a group together. You don't necessarily know the other players running an assassin, especially since assassins don't go around broadcasting it. The assassin with any intellect is going to be playing up the morality and going along with it. It
depends on the whole detect. The whole detect evil thing is where that kind of.
I'll come to that. The biggest problem we had is when we were kids, when we were like 12 or 13, the paladin player always used to argue that the detect evil was just simply an evil radar. He could walk into a pub and go detect evil, detect evil, detect evil, detect evil, and work out immediately who the evil individuals in the pub were. That and from what I've read on a lot of message boards, a lot of discussions, a lot of people made that mistake. That was never the intention of the power.
The intent, yeah.
But that is the way a lot of people ended up playing it.
That would be the natural sort of inclination. It's like, it's a binary. I can detect evil, yes or no. Okay.
Well, in a thing of like, if you only have 3-pronged alignment of law neutral and chaos, or good neutral and evil, like then the chaos would just be you're radiating evil because you're like an orc or a demon. So yeah, that's fine. But in a 9-prong alignment system of like lawful evil and chaotic neutral, it's like, no, you'd have to. I think the justification people ought to go for is, the assassin must be thinking of an evil intent, and then if you're detecting it at that point, then you can.
That's what the more with experience. That's what the intention was. The intention was that the paladin could, if they concentrate and they focus on something, they could work out whether an item is tainted by evil, a place is tainted by evil, or a person currently has evil intentions. That means it doesn't detect the assassin who is just having a quiet pint, assassin by profession, who may have murdered a few people, but at the moment he's just chilling, having a quiet pint by the bar. So it won't radiate evil. It won't radiate any evil because he's having a quiet pint by the bar at the moment.
The DMG actually. Sorry, finish your thought now.
If he was actually thinking of murdering the merchant in the corner, then the assassin would pick up something the paladin would pick up something dodgy about him. But that's for the DM to rule on. It's not the all powerful radar that people.
Right.
In my experience, people tried to push it as.
That's why I like this. Yeah, no, go ahead. Good.
I was going to say I encourage my paladin players to use the detect evil liberally. They should, but at the same time, I've got the parameters for when it'll trigger and when it won't. The DMG gives great parameters for it. First, any supernatural evil will radiate. Boom, bar none. Fair. Like a werewolf, even if they're in human form, undead, of course. Any magic item that's infused with evil will do it. But the key thing for ordinary people and player characters is they don't radiate evil unless they have 8 hit dice or more. So that assassin of eight hit dice will radiate evil, even if he's just sitting there having a drink.
Yeah.
Because
they're just so profoundly evil, that they've been around the block and done so much deplorable shit.
But of less hit dice, then no, they don't. And likewise, detect good does the same. A paladin would radiate good because they are supernaturally endowed.
But arguably, a ranger might.
A ranger might. Yeah.
Yes.
But, I would even that's why I like the Swords of Wizardry version, where the thing under allegiance is the paladin will not work with other characters other than those of lawful element unless ordered to. So I could literally say in the game, there's an assassin in the party. You do know this. You were told this, but you were ordered to work for him.
The assassin is an agent of the crown. You will work with him on this mission.
Yeah. They do deplorable things, but they're given pardon, and they're sent into like Stonehell with you, and you're there to watch them so they don't do anything too objectionable, like slit the party's throats while they sleep. But other than that,
The other thing about the Paladin, and a lot of people either chose to ignore it or missed it or just or intentionally forgot about it, were the role-playing restrictions. As a paladin, you were meant to always show honor in combat.
Yes.
You were meant to, which means standing in front of your enemy and declaring your intent, throwing down gauntlets, challenging people to duels. It doesn't mean sneaking through dungeons, picking people off. It means an honorable fight. It means chivalry, and I would see that as an as a role player now. I would see I never wanted to play a paladin, but reading more about that sort of thing as a DM nowadays, I would like to play that sort of character where I will demand that the ogre fights me. Fair.
Aren't we also going potentially into like lawful stupid with that?
These.
I think it's 100% fair interpretation. I mean, as a DM, I don't enforce that per se. For Cavalier specifically, I would. Cavaliers, they take that idea to the extent. Like, I don't necessarily think a paladin is always the knight of the round table, honorable knight. They could just be, the up and comer, the peasant who just has a strong moral code and has been gifted, these divine abilities by the gods. But they do have to be honorable in their interactions. It doesn't necessarily mean chivalrous, but definitely honorable, because there's different ways to convey honor. But definitely a valid interpretation. I just don't think it has to be an absolute.
Remember, it did become a subclass of Cavalier. So
right. No, absolutely. I like them.
Well,
separately,
I wouldn't even say they have to be honorable. They just have to be virtuous. That's the thing. They have to be good.
Wow.
They should have some code of honor that they abide by. There should be a defining morality, a code of conduct that they adhere to. But at my point that I was sort of trying to go to is that they would also not entirely be stupid in the sense of because you can still be an honorable thing and declare that this ogre chieftain is to face you in honorable combat or to face you in the duel, which the monsters might go, you know what, we might entertain this, we want to see this one gets absolutely squished, and then watches the paladin defeats the ogres, and the ogres will go, well, he's just defeated our strongest, which means him the strongest, so we should probably back off now. That would be playing into the whole might makes right, and then the paladin would be honorably fighting within those rules, but equally so, it's not like they would just, let's say it's the group is facing down a bunch of enemies that, it's very clear there's going to be no victory, there will be no major gains from it. A paladin should also know when to say, we need to tactically retreat and come back to defeat
absolutely.
this. Because, again,
Kenny Rogers that shit. He's gonna no one to hold him and no one to fold him.
Yeah, I've always played the Paladin can tactically retreat. It's the Cavalier aspect that brings in that sort of retreat.
That's why I'm saying that's why I would say he'd have to be virtuous, because it's not virtuous to be foolhardy. Like, people can be honorable and foolhardy, but not virtuous, because that means you're excessive in courage, and cowardice is deficiency of courage. So, just don't,
I'm guessing, Alucard, that was the player saying, F it, I'll be a fighter. But let's look at this example, though. That's a great thing. Okay, we've got that situation. The Paladin is retreating. They're carrying the fallen comrade, and the fallen comrade is slowing him down. And the fallen comrade says, "Go, go, go! Leave me! Go! You have to live." Does the Paladin lose his status for doing so?
That's one of the ones where it depends. It depends on the DM.
Who is the Paladin's god? What is their order? What are their ethos? Because I don't think we can give a blanket answer without defining what is the law out of the lawful within the Paladin. It's a
in first edition D&D, you're assuming a deity along the lines of someone like Hieronymus in Greyhawk,
yes,
who was the epitome of chivalry.
Yes, I'm with you on that. Now, that's the assumption, but again, there are still the many things you can go around with it, because you can also take the samurais and the bushido, upon which they had to abide by, and then they would have to follow through with that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there could be whatever religious aspect you want to bring in. My point is, between a DM and a player, a Paladin is a layered cake. It is a unique character, one that you can go into a great deal of details, and need to go into a great deal of details, because you've got to have that North Star. You've got to have that understanding of what is the lawful, what is the order of this character. If we're going by Hieronymus from Greyhawk and we're going with the honorable knights, then we need to set that out. What is it that the order dictates from you? Whereas if you were to say, let's take a Paladin of Cord, the god of strength, rather, then at that point, there's going to be a different interpretation for what it is that you are going to be looking to do and accomplish as a Paladin. So
yes, the tenets of the deity matter.
It does, and so does the order.
I say we got the first edition Paladin all locked down by this point.
No, I don't believe we have.
Well, I mean, in the philosophies and theory, but now let's look at the mechanics. I mean, L said upstream that he's like, "Oh, paladins are useless." And I was like, I have to question just how much AD&D L has played, simply because paladins are desired. I've got my team good has 2 paladins in the group, and now that they've had a taste of 2 paladins, like, oh, we got
a third.
They want a third, yeah. It's, that protection from evil alone.
Religious war.
The protection from evil alone is worth the price of the paladin, because it's just so useful. It has changed so many combats and given them the win so many times.
The bit I wanted to focus on, though, is the initial creation of the paladin, the balance of statistics. In order to become a paladin in AD&D, you had to roll a 17.
17
you had to put it on, you had to put it on charisma. How many times, using the 4d6 method, fairly, and you get a 17, how many times do you then manage to get multiple other bonuses on other stats, more than maybe 1 or 2 stats?
Very unlikely.
And thus you have that sacrifice to make. So mechanically, those bonuses, that protection from evil, that healing, there's often a little bit of a trade-off in that they are not quite as effective as a pure fighter in terms of going purely toe-to-toe, because they are less likely to have either a good strength or a good dexterity or a good constitution. There is that mechanical trade-off, but that 17 charisma makes them the leader. It makes them the focus for hirelings. It makes them the focus when they're dealing with NPCs. I think they should be played that way as well.
Yeah, and if your game is using charisma properly, and that's here's the problem: is a lot of DMs hand wave charisma. They don't use the charisma mechanics as presented, and that is devastating because it diminishes the paladin and anybody with a high charisma, not just the paladin, but if you're using them correctly, then the paladin really shines.
Go on.
I was going to say we have the two paladins in the game. The one paladin who is the de facto leader, he has both an 1886 strength and an 18 charisma. Right? Yeah, he got the god sets. The other paladin, the junior partner, he's got the baseline. Like he got the 17 charisma and no bonus anywhere else. And yet nobody questions his usefulness. But the one with the 18 charisma, and I had to just go over bit by bit with him how the charisma worked. And it's like he had a plus 40 reaction adjustment just for his charisma alone. And if you're dealing with humans, you get the preferred bonus, racial bonus. That's another plus 15 or 20. And then when we in the wash, I said, if you're dealing with another lawful good character, you're base plus 80 on the modification. You cannot get a hostile response. The minimum response is a friendly response.
Yeah.
And that's before I roll the dice. He's like,
so
that's pretty good.
Well, I mean, unless it's like I imagine someone who's diametrically opposed in alignment to the paladin.
Well, there are alignment. That's why I'm saying lawful good, because there are alignment modifiers.
Yeah.
If you're using the chart.
Yeah. Like with dwarf racial modifiers or elf racial modifiers. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's why I'm saying I assume dealing with a lawful good human. Right. That's the best possible scenario. And even the henchman he has, the loyalty is sitting at 170%. Like he's never going to break loyalty.
But exactly, and I mean, I've used the encounter. I used the encounter reactions and the charisma reactions quite often because I think it's a major thing. And when we had just like a bard with a decent enough charisma, that was a major thing. And when we had when I had another game where someone actually managed to get the baseline stats of a 17. They would just find that all social encounters, NPCs would just be like, yeah, that's nice, but they would turn to the paladin and be like, well, you are clearly the one who is in charge here. Like they would just defer to him because of that magnitude, that charisma, that power,
that strength, that strength of presence, basically.
Exactly, and it's the whole thing of like you carry yourself in a. With Hungar is calling us nerds once again.
Nerd and proud.
Very nice of him. But it's a huge advantage, if you're going to play in with the whole thing of like you've got the social benefits, then you have a character that's viewed as a form of a knight, assuming that that's what you're going to give them as a title. Even if they are a peasant, they're still going to be seen as some form of like, well, you are either one of us, you are someone who, rubs shoulders with us. There's going to be some sort of like positive magnitude.
You are ordained by God, basically.
Even yes, you are ordained, absolutely. But like, even not taking into religious aspects, you can just go by the whole thing of like they just trust you. You just feel good talking to this person. There's something about them that makes you think they have your interest aligned. And even if they might turn out like, well, it's not exactly aligned, they'll be like, okay, well, I'm sure we can find a middle ground or something. There's something that will push them or pull them in that direction. And that's what is awesome about the Paladins. They are a massive multiplier when it comes to these events. And that's just looking at the social aspects before we even get into dice rolling, the combat side, the sheer bonuses that you get for that, the aura of bravery when you are then having to go up and face against monsters that like dragons, for example, where you can counteract the aura of fears that a dragon would be commanding in its presence, and then you're going to be having. No, thank you, Squirrel.
Cheers, Squirrel. We are now geeks now. We're not nerds now. We're geeks. It means we are S class and not A class. If you watched the video I did yesterday. Anyway, keep going. Cheers, Squirrel.
I will.
Yes.
I would like to point out before we continue. L's saying that we're proving his point, but I would also like to point out, L, that you've self-admitted that you don't play in games that have paladins in them. You play basic.
Basic has
Right?
paladins.
Yeah.
Beck
No,
me,
literally he
Beck
says
me.
nobody.
Beck me, yeah.
Beck me. Yeah. But he also says that one, like Gygax didn't envision the paladin to be like Jeanne d'Arc. He based it off of Paul Anderson's Three Hearts and Three Lions. Yeah,
Sure,
so-
but that doesn't mean Joan of Arc couldn't be a paladin. I mean, we have to leave room for expansion, so there are other interpretations that can apply.
There are many interpretations of what you can basically say what a paladin can be interpreted as. I think it falls back to like other questions, like what is the order, what is the deity, what is the North Star of that. But that's
I think DK is right, and that was Gygax's original vision.
The
but
inspiration,
obviously-
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just saying
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I mean, you're not limited to the inspiration.
Well,
We can
obviously,
expand.
I think you should try and keep as close to like the original like vision of what is intent. But again, at the end of the day, it's your game. You can do what you want.
But I mean, everything we're saying just goes to show that even though a paladin seems sort of one note and limited, look at all the variations we can think of. You know, the lawful good can be interpreted a number of ways based on the order, based on the divinity. So paladins are nice and
Flexible.
broad, flexible. So
But
great
I think
class.
It's a great class. I think it's also one of those classes where the player also has to like put in efforts to the character, because there is going
Very
to
much
be
so.
work. There's going to be the requirement from the player of thinking of what is my North Star, what is my order, what is my deity, how does that correlate into my character. You have to put some level of thinking into like how this molds them. You know, the personality can't come and be blank and then build up as you go along. You've got to have some sort of direction when it comes to this. At least that's my opinion when it comes to paladins.
I agree, and L's saying here that the problem with paladins is no clear direction or intent, but that doesn't matter because you can find that. You find that based on your individual game. It doesn't have to be laid out in concrete stone.
Like,
Just the key elements of the law and the goodness and the virtue and all that. That's enough to go on. You can build from there.
A fighter, there is a clear intent. Well, like what do you mean by fighter? Like what's the clear intent of a fighter? That the definition of a fighter is so broad.
We are getting off track. We're not talking fighters.
Yeah.
So let's get back onto paladins. But it's there has to be, like, from my point of view, the player has got to put some effort into this. You know, you're gonna come in, you're gonna have a cleric, you're gonna have to sit down, you're gonna have to put in the effort and come to the DM and go, here is the order, here's the things, here's what makes my paladin drive out.
It's not a class that should be picked or should be encouraged to be picked by a casual player. Because,
or an inexperienced player.
It is a class that has been abused by the power gamers over the years, who've tried to get around the drawbacks and just use the powers. And I think that's a bit of an issue with the
That's true of any powerful class.
Yeah, that's true. I think especially with the paladin, simply because its drawbacks are very much in the role-playing realm. And if you've got a game that is mechanics, tactics heavy, then they can often get away with it.
Well, you've already laid out the foundation of what your game is going to be about. If you're going to be focused on what the die says and what the number says, then that's the game that you've chosen to play as. But most games that we, at least here, play has got elements of role-playing or immersion into the world, at least to some aspects. And then that's where a lot of these drawbacks can be pulled upon. I mean, I've had an event where I ran Pathfinder, and I really, I formed the player who was playing a paladin. Like, the system says you can be of, any lawful alignment. I will put down hard line. You have to be lawful good, because that's the way I role play my paladins. And I explained to them, I took them through the steps of it, and the player realized that they had picked a character that was, or a class that had a higher demand than what they were ready for. And that was something where it just became a case of like, okay, well, let's rework it so that it's fun for you, because there's nothing worse than a player turn around going like, I'm not having fun. It's like, well, maybe the class was too advanced. Let's scale it back. Let's find you something else. Nothing wrong with that.
Okay. As for the Unearthed Arcana version of the Paladin, I want to cover that when we get to the Cavalier. Because
if we get to the
Cavalier, yeah. So moving on to second edition.
Yes.
Now, second
They're mostly
edition,
the same.
They are mostly the same. Yes.
They did have kits, but outside of that, yeah, basically the same.
Yes.
They nerfed the protection from evil, but the other abilities remained pretty constant, I think.
Yeah.
The only one I'm just spotting at is again detect evil, because it doesn't describe intent. It describes, within 60 feet, the locating evil in a particular direction. They can do it as often as they desire, and the ability detects evil monsters and characters. Does not mention anything about intent. So this is where it basically looks at the alignment.
It almost becomes a no alignment, which is, and that's a retrograde step.
We got a donation from Elfbait, just so you know.
Cheers, Elfbait. Thanking you.
Thanks, Elfbait.
Very, very much indeed. Cheers.
So yeah,
shame you couldn't be on stream tonight.
Is he saying we're nothing now? Like we were nerds and geeks, now we're nothing?
Yeah. He's got nothing to say.
I would say that the squirrel still outbids him.
Well, but so obviously, by taking sort of I think some of the flavor away from the detect evil and specifying evil monsters and characters, that is a bad step. A good step, though, for me was taking the Paladin a little more back to its first edition roots, away from the Unearthed Arcana version of the Paladin. They scaled it back again. But you still had the same restrictions. You still had the same demand to be human, had to be lawful good. I never had the Paladin kit book for second edition. I never wanted it, but I did get this down from my shelf, and I think this is a great inspiration book for Paladins. Oh, there it is.
Yeah,
down.
Charlemagne's Paladin. Yeah.
Charlemagne's Paladins. Yeah, and I think if you want to play a Paladin, you really should at least have a browse through bits and pieces of that to get some ideas, because it gives you it gives you an
historical, some foundation.
Historical, yeah, quite. I think that's a good source book. But aside from that, there was no real difference to Paladins in second edition to 8 than to first edition. They kept the class pretty true.
Crafting Gamer gifted a bunch of
memberships.
I saw
them.
Has he?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he has. Great. Good on you, Crafting Gamer. Thank you.
Cheers, Crafting Gamer. Thank you very much indeed. I can't see it in StreamYard. It doesn't appear, but those of you on YouTube will have seen that, and I've seen a number of you turn green, which is marvelous. I like to see green. Green is good. But yeah, second edition, those splat books, the add-on books, did provide a number of options, but I did think Paladin was a class that didn't need one of those. It already was a class with enough flavor to it.
Listen, you can have many different tastes of vanilla, but at the core of it, it is still vanilla.
Yeah.
Hey, don't you be knocking my French vanilla, man.
Listen, my point is, like, you can have Paladins in many different flavors with many different uniqueness to them, but they are Paladins at their core. That's ultimately what it's about. But you can take this idea to almost any of the classes and just make them more unique or more stylized for what it was.
There is one other thing, I forgot to mention this in first edition, and then there's the Dragon magazine article about the anti-Paladin.
I wanted to come to that after
later on.
All the,
very well. Just we'll put a pin in it. We'll put a pin in it.
Yeah, put a pin in that one. Because I want to mention that in conjunction with some of the later versions of the Paladin. Right. As you all know, my experience with third edition is very, very limited. I do remember the Paladin in 3rd edition still having that lawful good restriction.
Yeah.
So I think other classes, other races could now be Paladins.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they took away the stat limitations.
Yes.
And thus it became anyone could be a Paladin. And here I think they pulled the heart out of the class by making it common.
Yeah.
The strength of your abilities still relied on charisma, if I remember correctly.
Yes. So go on.
So you wanted to put the high stat to charisma to get the bonuses because that made your ability stronger.
But it didn't have to be.
But it was optional.
Anymore.
It didn't have to be.
Yeah. It didn't have to be a 17 anymore. And suddenly the Paladin, which became an aspirational class, became normal.
Well, again, you saw that in 3rd edition onward, because what they did a big shift where they basically went, all of these classes that you have, let's just make them core. So we've now got the core 12 classes, as we know, as many people have grown up knowing today. The idea of like core 4 classes is alien in the current gaming atmosphere. So they did a lot of these things that were changed around, but that's also because the system was changing from 3rd edition onward. It became skill oriented rather than stat oriented. You did still have the abilities from as you have with a Paladin. They would have bonuses from your charisma. That was still the requirement of it, but there wasn't a strong emphasis upon it because you became more of a unique kind of fighter. With the capabilities of casting spells on the side, and you even learned spells earlier, depending on
you became more like a fighter cleric in essence.
You did, and that's fine because that's the direction that Wizards of the Coast wanted to take it in 3rd edition, and they kept going with that, and they've kept it that way. Fine, fair. It's not what we saw in 2nd edition and earlier, but that's how it is. But It was a very much oriented towards, it was going to be a combat class with the supporting role, with minimal supporting role of that of a cleric, with some of its lay on hands buffs and some of the field environment that they could deploy as a cleric / paladin spells, and for those, that's what their new purpose was within the system. And that's what you basically had to play into. There still was a focus on the fact that they were the diplomats, much like it was the same for the bards and for the clerics to be the diplomatic ones of the team. It just gave more variety. But they, as you said, they took away the uniqueness by making it common. But that was the intent from 3rd edition onward, was that they didn't want to have the restrictions of numbers or rolling statistics. They just wanted you to go, you can play whatever you want, and they're all going to have their own unique things. And for that, there was some things suffered, but 3rd edition I could not say that we can compare it to AD&D Paladins or OD&D, because it was a different direction, and we can't hold them one for one.
No, quite. I've never played a Paladin, nor have I read the class in 4th edition. I just know what I know about 4th edition. And I am going to make the assumption that everything felt a little bit homogenized, because that's what everything I've ever seen about 4th edition was quite homogenized. It was all sort of like classes felt very, very samey, and all powers became very, very battlefield orientated, because it was more of a strategy game than a role-playing game.
Yeah. Now we arrive to the new child of the family, 5th edition.
Okay, right.
I'm going to preface this by saying Paladin was the very first class I ever played in any role-playing game, because I started with 5e.
Right.
Okay. It is a sufficiently powerful class. It is a very good class, but it is a very soulless class, as a lot of the classes are. Yeah, I know. The irony of it.
The problem is, in the flavor text, it describes paladins as divine fighters, which by the definition of the word divine means their powers are coming from
the gods.
A deity. But yet, I also see it argued that paladins don't need to have a god; they just need to have an oath. And that to me is a problem. I'm not religious. I am not a religious person.
Neither am I.
But if you're going to play a paladin, as far as I'm concerned, in a game, I'm very, very picky that you will have a god because you are a divine class. Your powers are coming from the gods in a world where gods are
real,
objectively real. So, if you come to me and say no, I've just got to have an oath, I'd reply. My reply would be, then you are not playing a paladin. Sorry.
No. You swore an oath. Which god did you swear your oath to?
Exactly.
That's what I would say. I would say,
yeah.
well, which flavor of god did you swear to? Hey, Omen.
Yes.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that. It's I think, well, it's not just paladins; it's sorcerers and warlocks and all these others where they
and the ranger.
Well, yeah, they have such great flavor in 5th edition, and then they're just like, yeah, but we're not going to put any mechanics to limit you, and it's
lip service
specialness. Well, and that's why, whenever we're talking about first or second, it makes a huge difference when you can be dropped. Oh, you're this, now you become a fighter. Oh,
yes.
This, now you become this, and it makes it that's the way that I feel about that. Is that's why I always say I think it would have been better if they just did these classes and then waited until 5th or higher, and they put that as a subclass, because then you can lose it and say, hey, you can switch over. But 5th edition just doesn't do that.
By this point, the paladin isn't like classified as a sub fighter. It's there's like references to how they used to be fighters and that they get extra attack and their hit dice and stuff like that, and their weapon proficiency. But other than that is most 5e players wouldn't recognize that because they never played older editions, so they wouldn't know. So might as well just be its own thing.
Well, but I meant, but a lot of the classes, I think it would have done very well. It's whether it's the barbarian or anything else. So now you guys will get to it eventually.
Now the idea of the oath. I mean, combine the oath with the fact that if you say, well, they've got to have a deity. I don't have a problem with the idea of the oath because I do think most of the oaths are quite flavorful. But as you say, there aren't the limiting factors in there. There is the assumption that you will role play the ideas of the oath, but there's nothing to say what will happen to you if you don't, unless there is that you can be an oath breaker, but that is in the Dungeon Master's Guide, away from the Player's Handbook, and it's not an official.
It's a villainous option, and besides, anyway, the Oathbreaker falls into my problems with like the anti-paladin anyway, which we will get to in a moment.
And the other issue is almost all of those oaths have a very either lawful or good aspect
connotation. Yeah.
I would struggle to see maybe a chaotic neutral evil, or chaotic evil alignment fitting with those oaths because of what they're designed to achieve. And so there is still that push towards playing good, but the problem is there's nothing there saying, well, if you don't play good,
you can't play them.
You can't play them. There's a problem. Yeah. And I think that is an issue. Aside from that, though, I think the idea that those channel divinity powers and the power to holy smite, those are what we think of the paladin being like in older editions. We think of the paladin smiting evil and having the ability to command undead to go away like a cleric would, and heal and protect and cleanse. Those all come from that channel divinity ability still, but it's that lack of restriction, and that to me is the problem.
But I mean, like DK said, it's many of the classes beyond the core. That's why I said it would have been great if they had made those subclasses, in my opinion, for that. But they've made a lot of it soulless, and it's really up to the DM to do it without having a lot of things. And I think that's really been a disadvantage. Not only that, it's also the use of alignment. Now that they've gotten further and further away, it's like, well, you would have just been better removing it entirely. In that aspect, I mean, there's several things that they, that they've moved far away from. I don't even want to call it. What do you want to call it? The cosmology of D&D, to the point that it's the good and evil were definite powers that were struggling against each other, and evil was caught in the middle, and we've gotten it away from that. So
now I want to veer now into that Dragon article, and Elfbait has mentioned it here as well. And if anything, in a way, it has similarities to the 5th edition approach of having those different oaths and different powers. But for me, one thing I did like about the Paladin of every alignment article was that if you weren't lawful good, you weren't a paladin. You were called something else, something more applicable.
Was the Myrmidon or whatever?
The Myrmidon,
and the powers were, as I say, were individual based on the alignment. It still kept alignment as being important, and the idea of having the Avenger type character or that sort of thing with different powers, but again, still having a strict code and a strict alignment you've got to follow, was fine. I would allow those.
I'm of two minds of it. It really depends.
They wouldn't be called paladins, but
but not even that. I don't even think because it just, to me, if you're just but they're not called paladins. Like that to me is kind of a semantic argument. They're mechanically almost identical, so they might, in my mind, they might as well just be paladins with a different coat of paint. The baseline is there, and my reason for being against it is that lawfulness and goodness, the highest ideals of what would say honor, virtue, mercy, and compassion, when you are
Cheers, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. That side of the argument should have this one silver bullet, this one thing that only it gets, because it's just something about this person is so virtuous. They are ordained by the gods to protect all that is good and all that is righteous. And if you need a diametrically opposed version of that, you can choose. My option is the assassin, because that is the true anti-paladin, at least without the dungeon article. Or you can have like a Death Knight or an undead creature who had fallen to the dark side. But if you give it a class, to me, it just cheapens it for the player choice. Like, you have to earn to be a paladin. Whereas if you just behave evil, you have no restrictions. You basically, the choice is, well, I don't have to hold myself to a high ideal if I'm like chaotic neutral or neutral evil.
I'm going to bring up one thing, and it specifically says this, because I now have the Dragon Magazine article right up there.
Oh, nice.
Which is Dragon Magazine 106. But it specifically says, use of these classes player characters is not recommended, as they have not been playtested for balance and tend to duplicate powers from existing classes.
Spoonie did a video on this and even says, but they have these experience charts and but don't play them. It's like, we know for a fact that someone is going to try. Just the sheer fact that it had,
But I mean, Dragon Magazine was the test bed for all these things, and we're also forgetting that followers also gained experience, and as such, you can have followers that are of different, classes and stuff.
That's fair.
And you know what? They even have a class called Politician and Bureaucrat, and the Jock, which of course the Jock is tongue in cheek. But so effectively was the Bureaucrat and Politician. But then they have the Grave Figure. They had dozens of classes in there, which would probably, that's what I'm saying, for 5th edition, I wish that the Paladin had become a subclass of the fighter.
A fighter,
And then say, you can lose this, and you'd have to pick a second subclass, and it would made a huge difference, in my opinion, for that. But
I would. I would also point out that just the anti-paladin in general is just absurdly powerful. It's insanely powerful. It's ridiculous how powerful they are. They have.
It's supposed to be, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's supposed to be because it is the antithesis to the character's party. It's not intended ever to be anything but that. I think
it's the BBEG. It's the big villain. It is the guy that will walk into the battlefield, his arms spread out open for him to go, come at me. Show me whether you are worthy my attention now that you have it.
And the paladin is supposed to be the one who stands up against him. And
Exactly.
I do like, though, that built into the thing, it's like if anyone is of equal level and is lawful and good, that this anti-paladin is afraid of him, or even just a lawful good paladin of near level power level, he's terrified of him.
Well,
So I kind of like that that's built into it, that they have to make a morale check or something.
Yeah, again, because you're playing into the whole thing of they're not honorable in that sense. They're bullies. They pick on those lower than themselves. Ergo, why they will then see a paladin of equal measure to be like, oh wait, this is someone who is technically stronger than me. I really have to be careful now. And for that, they will be hesitant, and they might even hold back, and they might want to play dirty.
Never fight fair. That's a fool's errand.
Backstab. Yeah, they have backstab and can use poisons, and they spread disease.
The anti-paladin, the best thing for the anti-paladin is that if you use him as for like Strahd, rather than having him as a fighter, exactly. I mean, I was just reading, so going back through some of these, back in the yesteryear, how do they fight? Oh, they disdain hack and slash. It's much more of a, that's what it's supposed to be. But these are, we were trying to compare certain things. There were so many classes, and we knew they weren't tested. They had the archer, the duelist, and everything else. But what they were intended to do is, hey, I'm throwing this out there in the world because D&D being a class-based system, you did not have characters that were specialized like we do nowadays, where everything's a lot more open.
Right.
In skill-based games. So I don't want to say, oh, look, he's an overly powered character. No, he's just a... Yeah, go ahead.
I think Alpine has a good point here. It fleshed out each of the paladin-like classes to be their own things. They were paladin-like classes. They were not paladins per se.
I will fall back on
that. I will fall back on that. If you're not lawful good, you're not a paladin. That is the definition of the term for me.
I will perfectly concede that maybe my gripes with it aren't logical. It's just a personal beef with me. It just doesn't sit well with me on a visceral level. Mm-hmm. I just don't like it. Not saying it has to be logical. It's just
it's more.
It just feels cheap.
I don't like anti-paladins, but don't get me started on Uncle Paladins.
Hey.
But I mean, part of it just comes down to like the American is more of a druid fighter, because they get bark skin and stuff. I mean, that's what it was intended to be. Is hey, look, we have holy warriors for each, but remember that comes down to the nine alignments and the cosmology of the world. So it makes sense in that aspect. It doesn't make sense once you basically remove alignments, which is third and fifth. What's the point anyway? Sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I want to close Paladins on two often overlooked points. There were two things for me that made the Paladin class great. The one thing that made it not great was the type of player who often picked it, and it became a bit of a me class. I'm going to be in charge. I'm playing my Paladin. That means you can't play this, and you can't play that, and you've got to be something like that. That was the problem with Paladins. But the two big plus points for Paladins: one, the fallen Paladin became a Death Knight, one of the greatest monsters in the history of D&D.
Best undead ever.
Death Knight was a fallen Paladin.
My avatar is literally the Hibernian Death Knight. Come on.
Yeah.
It's great.
And the other great thing about Paladins could be turned by evil clerics.
Mm-hmm.
What?
And
yes.
Mm-hmm.
What?
And
seriously?
Often forgotten. Seriously.
You needed a really powerful cleric. They were treated as
in first edition. This is a first ed thing. This is a first ed thing.
And second, I believe.
The second, yeah.
Well, I mean, I figured it was, but I was saying like this was something Gygax put into.
Definitely.
Ooh. Oopsie. That's not good.
That,
but also,
I've never seen it happen, but it would be awesome.
There is a third thing you're forgetting, Geek. You're forgetting the very thing that makes the Paladin extra cool. A wonderful little magic item called the Holy Avenger. Because who doesn't want to be King Arthur? Who does not want to be King Arthur?
I had a DM who provided us with a Holy Avenger once, and it was a dagger. We're like, come on! It
has to be a sword.
I thought it could only be a two-handed sword or like a long sword.
No, it can be a long sword or a two-handed sword. It can be. It could be any bladed weapon.
Okay.
Yeah, it was funny. It still got used. I mean, it was immensely useful, but it was funny.
I just imagine he's just like he sees like this massive like sword handle in the stone, and he pulls it out, and it's broken. And it's like, you've got to be fucking kidding me.
Well, I mean, those were the things that the Paladin. That was the epitome of weapons, basically, for him. And not so much there, but if you got one that was intelligent and did some other stuff, I mean, you could really jack up. The other part was the character, that was what they had adventure for. The one thing I did not like about the first edition Paladin, speaking of which, was while it mentions it, they never really gave any rules for it. Maybe they didn't Dragon, I just don't remember. Was your horse didn't go up in power with you. And since your horse died, it was 10, it only had 40 hit points. It had less than 40 hit points.
5 plus 5 hit dice.
It did, but they had mentioned, well, maybe later on at higher levels you can get a Kieran or something of that sort, which is like, oh, well, that would be kick ass. But yeah. No.
I suppose they left that up for the individual groups to sort out, rather than saying like, at this level you're now given a Pegasus, at this level you're now given a Kieran due to your renown.
What I meant to say, you were supposed to adventure for your horse. So like all of us saw probably Clash of the Titans, the 1980 version or 81. And you go over.
I mean, there's a Paul Anderson as well. Like he was I keep forgetting the main character's names. It's been a couple months since I read it. But the main guy starts out with his warhorse when he gets to that world. So,
Right.
I'm just looking up to see what a paladin need if a paladin could be
destroyed,
even destroyed by undead.
No, I doubt it could be destroyed, but it's not out of the realms of the possibility.
I was looking at the chart a while back, and I don't think they can be turned, but never get to the point of auto destruction. Certain undead, like no matter how powerful the priest is, they cannot be auto destroyed. There's a threshold.
Yeah. So, I think it doesn't go any higher than whites. I think nothing higher than a white can be destroyed.
So well, unless you're using basic. But the Paladin's Warhorse is
level 1 or 2 paladin. Level 1 or 2 paladins are turned as per mummies, which can never be out and out destroyed. Yeah. So
there you go. Yeah.
But it says you have to go hunt for your warhorse. You kind of get a vision of it, and then you'll go out there. Game that will not be an impossible task. The creature might be wild and necessitate capture. It has all this stuff and says you'll have at least half the hit points of the paladin. But man, some of it really comes down to my feeling that Gygax actually didn't care if you went over 10th level.
But I think we've thoroughly covered the Paladin. Shall we move on to the Ranger? Or
got another hour and a half for Ranger talk?
Jeb has mentioned 3 Hearts and Felines, and yes. We mentioned 3 Hearts and Felines right at the start. The official Gygaxian source for the Paladin.
Paladin.
We've done Paladins. I'm about to sneeze. Right.
Excuse
me, please. Gesundheit indeed. Right. Now, we've done Paladins, so we move on to Rangers. Now, the obvious Ranger origin is
Aragorn.
That is the origin of the first edition Ranger. That's the obvious original beginnings of the Ranger. And the Ranger is a class that throughout history that has never really got its identity, never really got its niche. It's swapped and changed so much, more than any other fighting class. The
first edition had Rangers. Every other edition was a glorified tour guide.
No, OD&D had Rangers as well. OD&D had them as well.
Did it? I don't remember the Rangers.
Yeah, because in Swords of Wizardry it has them. They were introduced in the same supplement as the Paladin. He did have them.
Were they? Okay, well that's new to me. I knew Paladins had come in the Greyhawk supplement, but I didn't know about Rangers.
It was either Blackmoor or basically it was one of the supplements for OD&D, but it did come in OD&D. It did have them. I'm fairly certain it was Greyhawk though.
Okay, and I'm guessing very much in the same way as first edition AD&D Paladins were very similar to that original Greyhawk Paladin. The Ranger would be very similar as well. They started with more hit points, potentially a lot more hit points. They had 4 stats that had to be 13 or 14 or higher.
Yeah, 2 13s and 2 14s, and then nothing else below a 6.
And oddly, none of those stats were dexterity. So you are highly unlikely to have a dexterous ranger in AD&D, which is something I still to this day find a little bit odd, because
they have the dual fighting. There's rules for them to dual fight, and they need high dexterity.
No, there are. Dual wielding was a second edition.
Second edition.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought they had it in first edition as well. My bad.
No. It's the philosophy is different. First Ed Ranger is more like a special forces commando, as opposed to. I mean, they've got the woodsman abilities, but you can still wear the full armor. You were a beast in combat. You had the extra hit points. So I always look at them as like a.
L mentions the Robin Hood Ranger, but the Robin Hood Ranger was more the second edition onwards, I think.
If you're playing First Ed, you'd want to play Robin Hood. You'd probably have to play a thief.
Yeah. So let's go back to the core bit. Rangers were at the very beginning, in OD&D in First Edition, they were specialists in taking on absolutely insane monsters. If we just pick on
civilization-ending monsters, basically.
Yeah, but I think the first one that they picked on was giants. Giants were horrifying in the older editions of really scary monsters, and this class specialized in taking these things on. They did more damage to them. They could track them down. They were absolutely horrifying to those creatures, and then there were the special abilities that they could do additional damage to those creatures because they were a kind of enemy that they focused
they were essentially U.S. Army Rangers, because they had the alertness. They prevented themselves and their parties from being as easily surprised against giant and goblin type monsters. They could do extra damage. They had a lawful restriction in OD&D. They had charity followers, and interesting enough in OD&D, unless they reached a certain level. Now I don't know if this is true in AD&D. Until they reached a certain level, only a party could have one ranger at a time.
Yes.
Until they got to 9th level, and OD&D until they got to 9th level, only one ranger per party, and that was it.
In AD&D they upped it to 3. Yeah.
3.
Yeah. Only 3. Jesus.
I think the thing about First Ed Rangers is if you a baseline ranger, no stat adjustments. On average, a 5th level First Ed Ranger with a bastard sword could one-shot an ogre, the average ogre, and that gives you an idea of their power level.
No, absolutely. They were not they were very good when you pitted them in environments that they were familiar with against enemies that they were designed to take on. Because at least in First Edition, once they were given a target such as a giant, it was just a matter of time before that giant would die, because they were hyper focused, absolutely horrifyingly so, and that's one of their key strengths for when you have a ranger. It's not just a field guide. It is you're taking on someone who has dedicated a major part of their lives into hunting monsters of a certain caliber.
Yes.
Yeah,
and that tied in with there had to be a good alignment.
The good alignment.
Yes.
They were champions of civilization, even though they never really lived in it.
Important to note that the books say giant class. They get a damage against giant class, and then they various humanoids. I like to term it as humanoids and giant class, and that clears up the confusion.
Yeah, that's why
Even
in Swords of Wizardry they call them giants and goblin types.
Even at low levels, rangers were protectors, protectors of the innocent. That's the good alignment side of it, rather than the law neutral chaos. They were protectors of the innocent. And
may I ask a question though, when it regards to the Rangers hit dice though, because I've heard this from people that because they get 2 hit die at first level, it means they got to add their Constitution modifier twice. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
It's per hit die.
Absolutely.
It is per hit die. Yeah.
So they actually had the highest hit points until you started going
potentiality anyway.
18 con means you can start with 24 hit points.
Yep.
Around level 6 or 7, the fighters and the paladins would go past
16 plus
on
8.
average.
Yeah.
Even up to 10th. Even up to 10th, they're still doing a little. Because I've done the little math, they're a little bit higher.
I thought it was 6th or 7th where the fighter typically would go, or paladin would. It depended on the constitution.
That's because of the average. Because unlike Swords and Wizardry, where all fighter classes have die 8 health, except the ranger, which has 2 die 8 at first level.
Yeah.
The average of a D8 is like 5, but the average for a D10 is 6. So on average, eventually, based on averages, the fighters and paladins will go up.
So I mean, if you look at it, 5.5 times 9, you're right around that 50 hit points. But for a paladin, for a ranger, they're at 4.5 9th level.
Yeah.
So they're really, really close. And then when you add the con bonus,
it depends on the con bonuses where they diverge. Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty much the Rangers has more hit points all the way up to 10. Very.
Brad. Yeah. When I learned that, I was blown away. I thought you added it per level, not per hit die. I
learned this when I came back to the hobby in 2012. It's not something I realized when I was playing in my.
Brad, if you want to know something really funny, when I played a Ranger in Geek's game, I got a 0 con bonus, and I got an 8, and then I rolled a 1 in my hit die.
Yes,
that's the average.
First level.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. It's better than that, because that was one of the rules that we covered on things we got wrong while playing as kids.
Yeah.
That's why we're all familiar with it. Is because that was one of the things that we specifically brought out in that episode. Rules we got wrong.
I would also like to point out that because I totally forgot about this with all the extra damage or the extra attacks or anything like that fighters, paladins, and rangers get to do in OD&D and AD&D are with melee only specifically. Yes. Now this I think changed in 2nd edition.
Unearthed Arcana I think had some that were different.
Right. Yeah. So it's just interesting to note that Gygax still felt the need to put in the choice of, do you want to be ranged and take no risk, or do you want to go into melee, potentially take a risk, or do a lot of damage? I like. I like that trade-off.
I think it says, well, let's see.
Stabbing, it's like the backstab thing. It's with thrusting or with slashing or piercing weapons, specifically in AD&D.
Well, I can't remember. I'm looking at it says attacks per melee round. Is that just purely melee attacks or not? But they also got. Didn't they also? We're talking about all fire class here. Didn't they also get 1 attack per, or was it only the fighter that got 1 attack per?
It's all fighter classes get 1 per level against.
Yeah, OD&D said only bog standard fighters got the against 1 hit die or lower creatures, but in AD&D they added it on.
Yeah, all fighters.
One key thing to mention here though is the bonus attacks per round against all foes for rangers came in later than other fighting types. Fighters got 3 every 2 at level 7, whereas rangers will get that at level 8. Yes.
Right. Cool. But anyway, we kind of
rangers also got magic user and druid spells. And having magic user spells I felt was a little bit odd. But
I always felt it was for the utility. You're gonna get the things that will help you with your ranger abilities. Ideally,
you could justify it in that since they're like the commandos of a kingdom, they're obviously going to learn from like the magical secrets, like for scrying purposes, or maybe for invisibility. Like there is a way to justify it. It's just a bit weird, especially since like, and this is kind of why I initially thought Rangers were a bit stronger than Paladins. But like Paladins only got clerical magic, whereas Rangers got clerical and magic user magic, and I'm like, that seems a bit excessive.
Well, they didn't get a lot of magic user spells, and they only went up to what, second level or so. As the Paladins go up
they didn't get very high. Yeah, they didn't get very high.
I mean, so it was more of a utility aspect that they would have, like light or something of that sort. And then they got a couple of the druid spells.
I think the druidic
Shadow
came in
Shadow and Sun's
second.
got it right. Shadow and Sun's got it right here in saying that it's so they could try and explain why they could use crystal.
Yeah. This was just, well, we can't just give them all these class features, so we'll just duct tape magic onto it and be done with it.
Yeah.
Well, and so, that's the issue of whenever you start having class-based systems, how much are you limiting them? So
Now, I will concede you are correct on like skill-based systems kind of have class-based systems beat them, and I'll concede that.
I'm just saying for sure.
As with the Paladin, the Ranger got the Unearthed Arcana treatment. And I think the changes in Unearthed Arcana were pretty good for the Ranger, in that they made, for me, they made the tracking a little more logical. I felt that the Unearthed Arcana's take on the Ranger's tracking ability was better than in the Player's Handbook. Now, I can't remember if Unearthed Arcana was when they got their limitations on what weapons. I think it was.
Yes, it was. You had to have a bow, a sword, and a dagger. After that, you could
and an axe, a type of axe as well.
Yeah.
And this, because they brought in the weapon specialization. This actually slowed Rangers down because a Ranger, before they could start even thinking about other weapons, a Ranger now, and I think this is good thematically because it fits the idea of the Ranger being an outdoor sort of a more utilitarian sort of individual, in that they had to have one type of knife or dagger, one type of sword, one type of axe, and one type of bow. As their first 4 proficiencies. They only started with 3 at first level, and they got their next one at 3rd or 4th level, I think it was.
4.
So
they same as fighters. 3rd.
Yeah.
Oh, was it 4? I thought fighters got them at 3rd.
Yeah, the Rangers
every 3 levels after first. So
Rangers were slower there, so they didn't get those. It was dubious regarding weapon specialization. I know of DMs who would only allow it for fighters. And I've always allowed it for Rangers, but of course that proficiency table meant that they couldn't even think about specializing in a weapon until they were level 7, because they had to have the range of proficiencies beforehand, which balanced out somewhat those extra hit points. Rangers were absolute beasts at 1st, 2nd, 3rd level because of those extra hit points.
Interpreting it strictly by the book, you have to take that proficiency, the specialization at 1st level. So what you'd do is you'd specialize in your weapon and then fill out the required proficiencies as you leveled.
Well, it'd be one way of doing it.
That would be the strict by the book interpretation, which of course I toss out the window, and I'm sure you do too. But
I'm going to throw up something that everyone forgets about for them. Maybe a little bit different because we talked about the weapons. Look at the followers that they could get.
Oh, it's mainly animals.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
No,
beasts and
humans and semi-humans are 70% for each one, but then they get animals. They get mounts, which includes a centaur, hippogriff, or pegasus, and then they can also get
a copper dragon.
Some special were-tiger, were-bears, treants, a storm giant, and a copper dragon. I mean,
guys, Geek, I'm just gonna, because my screen is starting to frizz up. I'm leaving and jumping back in. Just give me 2 seconds. Yeah.
No worries.
I mean, that's something that a lot of us forget about, that they did have the ability to get that. And some of them says, okay, and you roll your percentile dice, you can go a plus or a minus on this. Depending on how you roll your 2d12. Up to the point, it's like 25% for each roll. You're like, oh, good grief. There were animals, but animals were only like 10% mounts. I mean, mounts were 10%. And then, of course, once you get to creatures or special creatures. But God, could you imagine? It says for a storm giant. Well, you get one storm giant as your follower.
Yeah.
or 2 to 5 tree ants. Your werebears. You got some really cool stuff from that.
Yeah.
If you rolled well. And,
Yeah. But I think that sort of thing would adds a little bit of flavour to the class.
Yes, I got the right-hand spot.
Slowly invading.
Yes, slowly creeping up, and DK moves to the bottom in terms of importance.
We have divided the faced from the faceless.
I liked those changes in Unearthed Arcana. I thought that was a good adaptation of the Ranger, and I think it worked, and it worked thematically. Now, in 2nd edition, this is where it started. Did you notice they shifted the stat requirements, so now they needed a better dexterity.
Dexterity, yeah.
So much changed.
Yeah, it's a completely different class.
It is.
Yeah.
So now you're starting to move towards the idea of they still had a lot of hit points.
Well, no, the D10.
No,
They had the
They
standard
still had,
D10.
they still had D10. They still had good hit points. They weren't a D8 class or a D6 class. They were still a fighter class, so they still had a good hit points. But the incentive was there for them to sacrifice a bit of armor class, and go with a more dexterous, lightweight fighter who would be very mobile, fight at range, fight with 2 weapons because they got the 2-weapon fighting, and the idea that they would wear light armor.
Well, there was a shift from the perception at the very least, whereas the 1st edition you were looking at heavy armor, heavy weapons, go and
Yes.
do
Mhm.
maximum
Yes.
amount of damage, a shock trooper running into it. Now you were looking at the Green Beret, the guy you dropped into behind the enemy
Yes.
lines, and he would be living off the land for weeks or months at the time, and you would never find him because he was the wilderness. He knew how to survive amongst it. They were going.
Now, this is more the Robin Hood. This is more the Robin Hood type
This was
Ranger.
much more the Robin Hood inspiration that they were going with. The guy who, it's even in the rules that in 2nd edition that the Ranger is not allowed to have any more treasure than what he can physically carry.
Well, that's in first ed as well.
Okay, well,
Yep.
It's been kept in at the very least, and then this is just more reinforced because, well, the Ranger's not exactly going to be able to carry a lot if he's running around in heavy armor. So it's just reinforcing the whole thing. You are looking at someone who is nimble, light on his feet, and who is looking at being more of, rather than be a frontliner from the 1st edition, he's more coming in from the supporting sidelines.
Okay, can I bring
Yes.
up one other point about Rangers, about 1st and 2nd? They could be multi-classed, unlike Paladins.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you could have a
Which I thought
Ranger thief.
was weird.
Not
it's
in
a bit
first
weird.
ed, but in first
In
ed you could be
second
a
ed, yeah.
ranger cleric, which is a potent combination.
Oh god, yeah.
But only the half elf can do it.
But I will like to just as minor gripe that 2nd edition Rangers brought into the world. Driz de Orin.
Drizzt isn't a ranger. He's a what is it? The blade dancer.
No, he's a ranger.
He started out as a ranger until they created a custom class for him.
No. Even in 5e, he's classified as a ranger.
No.
Is he?
Wait a minute.
That's
That's immaterial to the
Wait a
discussion.
minute. The Blade Singer's a kit. The Blade Singer's a kit, not a class.
It became a class.
Yeah, in 5e, it became a
all
class.
right.
It's by the sword
guys,
coast. Yeah.
we're way off topic for that.
Yeah.
No, bad, Eli, bad.
I've
I didn't bring up
got
Drizzt.
No, it's the
I've got
spell,
the
spell dancer thing that threw us off.
I've got the 2nd edition Player's Handbook open at the moment, and I'm on the Rangers page. And you've got, for example, you've now got the Hide in Shadows ability, the Move Silently ability. They've now got priest spells, which is a more general term used for cleric and druid spells. And you would assume with their focus that it's going to be a nature god that they're going to be praying to for their spells. So you'd be looking at more druid-like spells anyway, typically.
Well, it said plant and animal spheres, right?
Yes,
Usually.
yes.
Yeah, probably.
So
yes. Yes, it's only though. I've just read that only those of plant and animal spheres. So
Right.
yes, there is very much that push towards making them a fighter druid combination rather than the out and out shock fighter that can deal with big nasty enemies.
Yeah, I kind of preferred the 1E version. They sounded more badass than just being a, they went from U.S. Army Ranger to Park Ranger in one edition. It's like, whoopee!
Sorry, Saturnine has a question here I wouldn't mind answering. Just from a perspective of gameplay, he's talking about what about Ranger's ability to surprise 50% and the seemingly conflicting rule of playing plate mail. What I tend to allow is I keep the Ranger's base 50%, so that's a 1 and 3 on a D6 to surprise. But if they're wearing the metal or the armor, the sound reduces that. So they would reduce to a normal chance of surprise. They still have an enhanced chance, but wearing plate mail might reduce it by 2. So they still only surprise 1 in 6, where everybody else with wearing plate mail has no chance of surprise.
That makes sense. That does make sense.
This is the AD&D version, correct?
Yeah, first edition, they surprise
that's
1
to
3 on D6.
Yeah. In OE, it just like in OD&D that I'm playing, it just lowers their chance to be surprised rather than just increasing their odds of. Yeah. No, in OD&D, like Swords of Wizardry, it only does 1. It doesn't like in AD&D. It does. AD&D does both. OD&D doesn't.
Lord Full Mind's comment here makes a lot of sense. I've got the Toad of Magic. I've never really played much with it, but there is a new travel sphere spell added, and that makes sense.
I mean, that's fair. They are ranging. They go on the range, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, if we have to be strictly speaking, technically the Ranger in second edition can have any armor that they wish to have. It just means that they get certain penalties specifically towards dual wielding. So if you wanted to go down the route of being the heavy armored infantryman who would go out there and fight it, and you definitely could. You weren't even penalized by the type of weapon you chose. It just meant that you would be penalized when it came to wielding 2 weapons at the same time. That would be going after you. So if you're willing to sacrifice, let's say, having two weapons, or long, short, dagger, in exchange for having a higher AC, then there you go. You could easily still go out and have all of the other abilities. You'd also have side penalties towards your hide and shadow, move silently because of the armor you were wearing, but the point being, these were conscious choices that you would make, and you could be more flexible in that sense. Again, leaning more into that the Ranger was meant for more flexibility, though more focused towards scouting.
I would also point out that in second ed, if I remember correctly, couldn't you also choose the type of enemies? Like you got on the first ed, you got a lot. Yeah, you got a lot. You got a lot of choices in 1E. But not a lot of choice. You got a lot. Yeah, you got a lot of monsters you could damage. But in second ed, you can only choose 1 or 2. Which is unfortunate.
You picked one,
and then you get plus 4 to your attacks.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
That is it.
Okay, let's not forget one other thing here when we talk about Rangers for 5th edition. DM's option to use poison. Anyway. But yeah, for 2nd edition. I don't know what because I stopped buying the books for like the Complete Ranger's Handbook and stuff and what they had for them. So I don't even know what they had for that.
Oh, some of them are just outright wacky. One of them is that you become part of a tree, you get free arms, you can't heal by being healed by divine magic. You have to literally plant your feet into the ground and soak up nutrients.
Guard kit or whatever it is.
That's the one.
What?
Oh, it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's basically instead of being animal tied in with animals, he's tied in with trees and stuff like that.
So you literally become a dryad. You literally become a dryad, essentially.
Yeah, but you have free arms. Just think of think of all the attacks you're going to be able to get out for that. Free attacks in 1 row.
Sure, I guess.
So if you can get a 4th arm, does that mean you're always forewarned? Because forewarned is forearmed.
I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna go on a limb here, Muse. I'm gonna say probably not. I think you're barking up the wrong tree, my friend.
Right. So that's the Ranger in the second edition.
What were you going to say?
The rank of the class.
What were you going to say there, Elfbait?
Oh, I didn't know if at the start of Rangers, because I was kind of doing work stuff, if it actually ever came up that where the Ranger actually came from in OD&D.
Aragorn, probably.
No, I mean the actual creation, because I was tracking it down. It was actually from the Strategic Review by an article by Joe Fisher, so it's not even actually created by Gygax.
Oh, really? I thought was it not included?
It was a fighter subclass, or excuse me, a fighting man subclass in an article by Joe Fisher in Strategic Review, Volume 1, Number 2, Summer 1975.
Call him.
Why do you know when
Sherlock
they?
Holmes.
Do you know when they which supplement they included it in? Because the way what I'm saying is Swords and Wizardry has them, and it only includes like OD&D and the supplements. So I don't know exactly which supplement it was added into. Was it Greyhawk?
It doesn't look like, according to this, it wasn't actually in any of those. It was actually until AD&D where it became a fighter subclass.
Huh. I'm actually curious about that.
Now the Rangers,
because the Strategic Review issue that it was written into would have followed the original OD&D release in '74.
Now the Complete Rangers Handbook's been mentioned. I don't own it. I've never read it. I've heard no good things about it. And
got a couple of okay things. I like the idea of the Ranger moot.
I think the second edition, the standard second edition AD&D Ranger has got enough flavour baked into it anyway. And as Saxon has already said, has got the options, has got that woodsman feel to it. It's one of those classes I don't think needs an extra book.
I will argue that the book is worth getting, like most of those books, even if you just toss out the kits for all of the expanded talk or discussion of a ranger and what it means, because every one of those books had articles basically on the classes that they were covering. So there's a lot of good information in there on how to play a ranger, that the PHB class guidelines are pretty limited because they're trying to get you right in and get you playing. They don't really dive too deep into the whys and the hows. So, and there were a couple of kits that were fun.
I'm not saying I like the idea of the kits. I didn't like how they were implemented.
No, I'm just saying that the complete books, though, they were more than just the kits. There was usually new equipment, some discussion about how to play things.
The salvageable, even the bad ones. I tend to agree. I have quite a few. You can
cannibalize them. Like, if anything, they're just trying to use the current system to build upon and give inspiration. I mean, take the thief one. You can play a beggar and a smuggler in there. Would most players pick that? Probably not. But it's there.
I love the flavor of the thief one.
But my point is, like, they took them and they just went, right, let's just expand and give ideas for what you can go for. If you're going to be going, the Lone Ranger that's deep out into the woods, the mountaineer, the woodsman garden, so forth and so forth. These were all ideas for the DMs to then go and say, well, I can take this and build or make my own.
I'm going to say something here. Unlike the first edition, which really made Rangers powerhouses, you had to pick a species enemy.
Sorry about that. My brother walked in.
Right. I mean, and that could really. It was great if that was the focus of your combat for the game, but if it wasn't, it was kind of out. And that's, I think, one of the negatives that occurred as we went through. It's instead of
John just wants to take up all the attention.
I've just pressed the wrong button.
Okay, but that was one of those things that I think that a lot of us look at, because that's the way I looked at it. Is I always remember the second edition. It's like, oh, you only get this for one species, and you have to figure that out. And God forbid, once you start outgrowing certain monsters, it's like, well, why did I pick this one?
Exactly. Well, mind you, I've always house ruled in that a ranger would be able to, rather than at least in the second edition, it's a base plus form. It's good enough. A ranger would need to dedicate time to studying and analyzing the the specific creature that he is going to be hunting, then he can implement those benefits for that to sort of again bring back the whole idea of like he's got to sit down and study, hunt, navigate, understand his targets, and it's got to be in an environment of some form. So it's not just a case of like, I'm going to start, preparing to attack cloud giants. Well, okay, you actually need to go and track cloud giants. You need to find out where they are, study them, do all of these things before you're going to get these bonuses.
I mean, to me, if I was going to do this and play with the second edition, I would say you can select one racial enemy per. In other words, you get to select during your one adventure, for the adventure part, select what your racial enemy is for this adventure, and then when we go to the next adventure, you can select a different one. So that allows you to tailor it exactly for that. It's just
I would probably be a little less. I mean, yes, I like the idea of adding a few extra bits and bobs to it. But I would say every time they gain a new weapon proficiency, maybe they can get add an extra specific enemy.
No. What I mean is you don't add enemies.
Right.
For that adventure, you only select one enemy. So if you like your first level, okay, we're gonna be fighting orcs. Okay, that's your enemy for that turn. If you need an ogre,
right.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
I could see it as like adding a weapon proficiency, though. I mean, I wouldn't be averse to doing that. But not allow them to change them as they go up levels or whatever. But just okay, you've progressed through to 4th level. You've learned new weapons. You've learned new skills. Of the enemies you have fought up until this point, which one do you now want to study? That could be a nice organic progression. Okay, moving on.
From like druids having encountered something to shapeshift into it nowadays.
Yeah. I don't mind that. Don't mind that at all. Now, I've never played a ranger at 3rd edition. I have no idea what they were like.
So many times, but again, they're
still very similar in theme. The major thing they did with the 3rd Ed Ranger is they lifted the alignment restriction. You can be any alignment.
Yeah,
you were essentially a woodsman, right?
Well, and
could dwarfs be rangers now?
Yes, anybody. Once you hit 3rd Ed, any race can be any class.
Yeah, like there's no.
I know, Geek. I know.
But like that's again like what you are disliking is the core part of the system. And it's moved on. Like the moment
it's an option. I mean, if you want to run a campaign where only certain races can be something, you still have the ability to do so. They're just saying that the core game now presents a wider palette for people to kind of customize the setting they want.
Like if the ranger was still the anti-giant, anti-orc, anti-goblin thing that it was in 1st Ed, I would be like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. For a dwarf, because they really don't like them, but
there's like an entire edition and a major change of management between 1st edition and 3rd edition.
Okay.
You also have to consider that throughout the entire life of 1st edition and 2nd edition Rangers, they expanded Rangers into covering different terrains. So an underground Ranger that like a dwarf would make sense. They even had like basically urban rangers who were sort of like bounty hunter tracker kind of guys.
I wouldn't allow an urban ranger.
3rd edition.
Well, that's nice. You don't have to.
That's a no for me. That's
a rogue.
Elf, we understand what we're saying. What we're bucking against is the fact that we're lamenting the loss of this is little of the identity the ranger had at the time is now being lost.
Yeah, but the ranger, the more you're going to go into this, like you're just going to see the ranger from 1st edition or even OD&D, it's going to be eroded away from whatever it is that you're holding it to.
Well, and to be fair, 3rd edition, even Ryan Dancy mentioned this, it's a new game.
It is.
It was.
It's a new game.
And
that's all that's coming.
As much as I love the good aligned supernatural rangers, I mean, I get it. The ranger in 3rd edition is simply the woodsman, the guide, the person who understands wilderness, and that can be anybody. The survivalist, that can be any alignment. That can be any person.
just looking at the special abilities, again, favorite enemy, you have the tracking, wild empathy, then you're going to go into like the combat styles, then you're going to get the feat of endurance, then they get animal companions by 4th level, then they get another favorite enemy, and that's how they again continue to play it on. I think as you said, Sean, they're the guide, they are the tracker, they're the ones who you turn around and go like, okay, we are going to go over those hills, past the plains, and we're going to go towards those mountains. You have to guide us that direction, and when we get to the plains, you're the one who's going to have to like make sure that we find water because we're going to die otherwise.
Exactly, they're the ones you need rely on for survival and not getting lost. And I mean, arguably, if anything, that kind of class could be ported back as a supplement, as to like in something like First Ed, where it's not a ranger, quote unquote, it's the wilderness type that anybody can be.
But you can see those roots also stemming from 2nd edition, where it was the whole concept like the scout, the survivalist, the guy that's going to be taking you around places because of the focus that they had from there. That was at least the seed for it. But my point, go on.
I'm going to say one other thing here about this, which is, remember that the point is that good did not have all the champions it needed, and as such, these classes, such as the Paladin and the Ranger, were there to balance it out against the evil of the world. That's some of what we came down into, because it's an existential fight in the cosmology, which is something that doesn't really exist anymore.
No, because the fantasy as a genre has evolved past that for the most part.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to attract players in a modern age, you have to write rule sets and create games that appeal to modern sensibilities, not the sensibilities of 1974.
I would argue.
I would groan and moan and eye roll all you want.
No, because I find that to be kind of patronizing. Because I think that a lot of players nowadays have an have a love of things that are eternal. You can't just say, well, they're modern now. That's kind of condescending, dude.
No, it's not. Okay,
stop.
So if you're creating products, if you're writing games and you're trying to appeal to an audience, are you going to appeal to an audience that no longer exists? Or are you going to create a product for an audience that is there?
I still exist. I'm still here.
But you're in the minority, just like me.
I know.
Oh, no. The OGL allows you to build everything on whatever you want to do.
That is true.
And that's why, if you don't like the basic part, you can go to one of the other third parties that have it. Now,
exactly.
That's what allowed 3E to become so popular. Anyway, that's neither here nor there as far as that. We're just talking about as far as Dungeons and Dragons is concerned. It lost a lot of its uniqueness and everything else, where now it feels very homogenized.
Well, after 40, almost 50 years, how unique is it? It's really not.
Well, no. I mean, but if you look at it, there is a certain feel and flavor of the game of 20, and that's what I'm referring to as far as that. It's not that in many cases they're setting
the game. We all agree the game has changed
over the
editions and with the times, and there is a new crowd that is playing the game, and they've got different expectations of what they want out of the classes.
And we are all crusty old farts. Even DK, he may not physically be a crusty old fart, but he is mentally a crusty old fart.
It's funny, as I think actually I'm probably younger of spirit than DK.
No, it's not. This isn't an age thing. It's just.
Did I say age?
I don't know.
Spirit.
Yeah, no. But what I'm saying, I'm talking age in the sense of time period. I'm just saying of the fact that just because it's new doesn't mean it's good. Just because it's old doesn't mean it's bad. If that were true, we wouldn't be pulling from Greek myth or Gilgamesh or any of these old stories.
Listen, you're pulling us into a direction we don't even want to go. Let's just stop.
That's true.
Go back to talk about Rangers, all right?
So the origin of the thing, DK, is not the thing.
Saxius's tism is acting up, and I apologize for that.
Everybody take a big run up, and let's leap over the chasm that is 4th edition.
We're just gonna walk right past that and go the long way and tell it to go fuck
4th
itself.
edition.
Okay, What were we talking about?
Any 4th edition fans out there, we're not dissing it. We just don't play it.
Right, the 5th edition Ranger. The 5th edition Ranger. Right, the 5th edition Ranger is a class that has probably had more discussion and more criticism than any other class.
They
gets a lot of hate.
Yeah, I mean, it's the class that it went from one of the most powerful classes in the game to having its fucking knees cut off. It just got cut off at the knees, man. It got nerfed.
It wasn't even intentionally nerfed. It was just badly written.
Yeah.
The problem was there was a good. There are a couple of good Ranger options, but it's very much campaign specific. For those two, and the way a lot of the games are played at the moment doesn't play into the Ranger's strengths. When you druids that can feed everybody with goodberry, when you have when there's no real mechanics for getting lost, when everybody can have maybe a proficiency in a survival skill from a background, when there's the ability for a fairly low level arcane caster to create a safe place to rest every single night that is warm and comfortable, then
when the fighter can action surge, so the fighter is still better at it.
The fighter's action surging. It's just there's no real impetus to have a ranger.
The survivalist, yeah.
Because the Rangers, a lot of the Rangers' skills fall into the exploration and survival sort of tier, and that tier is woefully neglected in 5th edition. It's neutered.
It's sitting in an old folks rules home, in the corner with a cup of pudding and wishing its relatives would visit it now and again.
At first, second, third level, it's fine. But as soon as you get to like 4th, 5th, 6th level, so many classes have got abilities that just completely eradicate that side of play, and that's what the problem with the Ranger is. So you are left with a fighter type that's capable, if you've picked the correct archetype, of doing a lot of damage and casting a few spells, but other classes just do all these things better.
The only exception was the advent of. Oh, go for it.
Oh no, go ahead. Good.
No, I was saying it's kind of a joke that I've come to realize with the Ranger in 5e now, with the introduction of Xanathars, is: are you playing a Gloomstalker, or are you playing a shitty Ranger? Because the Gloomstalker is so unbelievably because I actually saw a video explain this where. He came up with this hypothesis that said, in order for wizards will never change a base class. So in order to fix it, when the base class is shit, they make the subclasses really, really strong. So it kind of invalidates the other subclass option.
Well, didn't they give it for the revised Ranger where they gave a couple of options instead of really doing?
But that's not. That was just a UA. They never put it into the official.
Tasha's Cauldron of Everything has a bunch of.
Did they put it into that as well?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yes, and it actually greatly improves the Ranger, but it's still starting with a broken class.
I'm going to say the other part, which is a lot of people like the Ranger because it has an animal companion, which is not spectacular because we're looking at a lot of power stuff. But
the mechanics of the animal companion.
Well, it's a specific it's a specific subclass, but you have that option.
Well, but I mean, but a lot of people when they look at the Ranger, like, oh, cool, I get an animal companion. Yeah, you do, and they kind of suck.
And it just
because you have to use your actions to tell the animal companion what to do.
Yeah, it's not even like you can. I can sacrifice.
I usually end up ruling it to where the animal obeys commands, and like a real animal, it can operate independently within those commands.
On the initiative,
guard, attack, fetch.
To make my animal companion do 1d6 like a bear, do 1d6 clawing damage, I have to give up 2 attacks to do this. Oh, whoopee!
Hold on.
We are
talking about some of the flavors. I mean, that's the really cool thing. And then, of course, we probably would all homebrew it to make the Ranger better. by going, oh no, you're like a real bear, and it actually does like a lot of damage or something. But
now I played in a campaign where one of the players had got an animal companion, and she had a war pig that she rode into battle.
Nice.
The DM hand waved away all those ideas, as Elfbait says, of on the first round you'd issue your command, and the animal companion would then follow that in general. So the ranger was actually on a saddle on the war pig, firing bows as the war pig was charging around combat, and that was actually quite good fun because the war pig wasn't overpowered in any way.
No,
the player wasn't pushing for power. It was just
for flavor.
It was the flavor, and it worked. And it worked fine. Didn't feel overpowered. Didn't feel underpowered. I
even allow the animal companion and the ranger to have a bit of a special bond beyond just a pet animal.
Yes.
Almost, I tend to almost treat it like a speak with animals spell in constant play, just because.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you could be like my wife's fighter, who spent an insane amount of money on a intelligent talking raven that she uses as a scout drone all the time. So you fly ahead, come back, tell me what you saw.
Like it's almost like it's like that kind of fills into the D&D mindset of there's just something about this bond that almost becomes supernatural. Where the creature for some
can have it, why not the ranger and his
I would just say literally the creature, because of the magics of the world and your bond is so strong, the world almost gives it a degree of supernatural intelligence where it just understands what you're. It's not like a general understanding. It would understand it the same way like maybe not like an adult human, but like a child would understand it.
Just a really smart pet.
Just really smart pet.
The comment from Halakar.
What?
Oh wow! We all know Rangers just wish to have been Marines.
Oh. Well, dude. The Rangers are the special forces, my dude. Not the.
I mean, I'm gonna hate saying this, and he's gonna take offense at it. You're just meat fodder, and they don't take care of you. So just
and you get the
the joke. The joke is that. Well, I mean, to be fair, like there is the joke that the Marines eat the crayons, dude, not the Rangers. So.
So anyway, I think we've done Rangers.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We're not going to get down the entirety of the list, so we're going to have one more stream on this on this general sort of topic.
Yes!
But we have got time to do barbarians, which is the next one. Now, the first time I saw a barbarian class, I don't know if there was one in Dragon Magazine. I really don't. So
Unearthed Arcana pulled that from Dragon Magazine. So was So that's same thing with the Cavalier. A lot of the stuff that they pulled on Unearthed Arcana came from Dragon Magazine.
Yeah, you'll see it in the Dragon magazines in that collection. There's also the best of dragons, and those are a really good place to see where they pulled the stuff for Unearthed Arcana.
But was the Unearthed Arcana barbarian pretty much identical to the Dragon magazine one?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay,
I mean, they
cleaned up some language and made some refinements, but yeah.
Well, remember, the barbarian was the Dragon magazine was the playtest. Unearthed Arcana is what they took as the best from those playtests, basically.
Now, I would argue that Unearthed Arcana barbarian really wasn't well playtested. Because
probably not.
Okay. Let's look at what it had. It had big hit points, potentially a double constitution bonus, potentially a double dexterity bonus if it light armor, and
thief skills.
But it
some
also has
skills too.
It had it did have quite strict stat limitations, but yes, it had outdoorsy skills. It had some sort of.
It also got the chance to. Yeah. It also got the ability to gain XP if it destroyed magic items, like wizard spell tomes.
Yeah, and it had role playing prohibitions similar to like what a not cavalier, but like a paladin had. Yeah,
They could
not be lawful.
They have to be like a fourth. They have to be like. Yeah, it could be lawful. You
Could
have
not
to be
be
like
lawful
fourth
and
level
had
before.
behavioral,
Yeah.
directions that it had to have.
If,
Now,
if
this
I
is
remember
where
correctly, you had to be
hold
like
on, hold on,
fourth
DK.
level. Go
Hold
for
on, DK. This is the bit I really want to plow into, because for me, it took the idea, the paladin, the paladin player was able to dictate what the rest of the party would be like. The barbarian class took that a step further, in that it had to reach a certain level before they could even travel with a cleric. Had to go into a higher level than that before they could even travel with a magic user. And
I was about to say that, yeah.
And the level, the XP requirements to gain these levels were astronomical.
It's like
So essentially,
6,000 to second level or something like that, wasn't it?
Yes.
If you were playing a Wilds campaign and you had a party of fighters, thieves, and barbarian types, the barbarian was a great class. But that's pretty much all you could have, because the alignment restrictions meant they didn't get on with paladins. They could potentially get on with rangers. That was okay. But again, it's a fighting type. So the clerics, core classes, the magic user and the cleric, were pretty much written out of the campaign, certainly at low levels, if somebody was determined to play a barbarian, which meant you had to have a really themed campaign for the class to work, which really, really restricted their usefulness in a campaign setting.
Could they associate with druids, out of curiosity?
Yeah,
Well, you're likely going to have a druid as the shaman of the tribe, but
right.
Now, those strictures, it's important to note that even Gygax pointed out that there wasn't meant to be that extreme. And this is where Unearthed Arcana failed, was in laying out how it could be played. And I, just for the sake of anecdote, this is how I run it, because I do allow barbarians as an option in my games. And I had to think about how to apply it. The players will look at the write up and say, well, we can't have a wizard and a barbarian together. It's like, yes, you can actually. And the simple way is in loose interpretation. So, well, first off, to me, a barbarian as a class is kind of absurd. Like, a barbarian is a descriptive term. Most tribes of wild folk and barbarians would be normal classes, or 0-level characters or fighters. I treat the barbarian as
very similar to what Brad has said here.
What is it? To me, it's culture. Yeah, it's a descriptive term. Well, so what I treat the barbarian class as is a spirit warrior of their tribe. So he's been endowed with special abilities by the tribe, whereas the rest of the tribe will be likely, like warriors or even rogues or rangers or whatever.
Either that, or they're from a culture of really out there people, like they're not even Celts.
They're Conan basically. So,
but in terms of interpreting the limitations, and this is the key. Like, for example, you get to level 2, I think you can freely associate with clerics, and there's the key word, is associate. A barbarian can be in a group with, say, that wizard, but it's a matter of, you stay at your end of the camp, I'll stay at mine. Don't talk to me. You use your magic anywhere near me, and you're getting a broken jaw.
Yeah, that's
right?
how I played my barbarian. It's like that because it was when Unearthed Arcana came out, I dove headlong into Cavaliers and Barbarians because I really enjoyed them. I even played an acrobat, so but my barbarian would camp by himself while the rest of the party had their own fire over there, because he was going to be over there in his little lean-to made out of sticks and everything. And
I don't trust you. You city folk have no senses. I'm going to stay hidden aside and keep everybody protected.
Too much magic on you guys.
Yeah,
I'm watching you.
So it can be played.
You even think, Mr. Magic User, of even looking at me when you cast that charm person spell.
Played him as refusing curing magic from the cleric sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. It's like, don't touch me with that. Don't touch me with that. And so
either be dishonorable,
man with pointy hats, stick away from me.
Yes.
But that does mean that it's important. It does mean you still have to role play the conflict between them, because there will be conflict. But that doesn't mean you can't have that group makeup. And sure, yes, it could create problems, but that's fine. That's advanced level play. That's players who get it, who can separate themselves from the characters and build.
It
on
would have
that.
been better if the book had spelled that approach out.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah,
Totally. Yes.
It's like I played Paladins a lot too, and there's that whole lawful stupid versus lawful good argument. It's like my Paladin may have not got along with everybody, but he was still there because it was necessary.
Well, and I'm going to bring this up is we're all looking at it as you play with the same group week after week. The reality of it is guess what? You're a barbarian. You can't join this group. What?
Yeah, because it was literally a West Marches style. It was West Marches style play, whereas like we go like it's like what you do,
West
mages.
Marches,
Like you have Team Good.
Sailed though by the time Unearthed Arcana came out.
Yeah, that's right. But what I'm saying, it's like what you do, mage. You have Team Good, and then you have the other group where there's Paladins and Rangers and stuff like that in Team Good, and then you can have anyone in the other team. That's kind of how they did it back then. So,
and barbarians were single class. You couldn't multi-class.
You couldn't multi-class at all. Yeah,
I don't
really.
Think you can't even dual class. Reading.
No.
You could only have that one class. You were a barbarian,
which does lead into the idea that does lead into the idea that they were as much a culture as a class.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
But yeah, player character barbarian cannot be a character with two classes. So no dual class. No multi-class.
Well, no multi-class anyway, because you could only be a human. So
yeah, I was about to say,
I had a lot of fun playing barbarian. So back in the
day. I mean, if you look at their skills, you can tell where they're getting off. I mean, you start looking at, since you don't have a cleric at the moment, you get the first aid, you get survival, you get outdoor craft, you get tracking. In many ways, it just felt like, we're just going to throw everything together in this big mishmash.
It's 100% Conan, though. The mistrust of magic, the
superstition,
climbing, the survival, the near supernatural levels of toughness, being able to fight in just a fuzzy loincloth,
the hatred of the hatred of civilization, and all. Yeah, it's all there.
Yeah, because Conan was always grumpy when it came to magic and mysticism, and
I mean, when Thulsa Doon had your dad ripped apart by dogs and chopped your mom's head off, I don't think you're going to be particularly, enthusiastic to deal with magic.
That's the movie, but that's not the Conan in the book.
Yeah,
anyway.
I know. I understand.
Neither in his world, in the world, the literary world he came from. Magic generally wasn't
evil,
liked.
yeah.
It was
pretty fucking evil.
Well, no, now, if you look at it, magic potions they couldn't use until third, so there was no drinking any potion.
No.
Magic weapons until fourth. Magic armor only happened at fifth. So even if you're great, unless if you're human, what's your best armor class going to be? Probably an 8 or so, or 0. So you can't get any better for that for shields. Then you're going to get only later can you start using protection scrolls at 9, and then most magic items available to fighters at 10. So I think sometimes everyone looks at the end to get there takes forever, and to do a lot of that. And then the question is how long is everyone playing? So
yeah, that's true.
Now moving into second edition. I would argue, I mean, I know they added a complete Barbarian's Handbook. And again, it's not a book I've got. But I would argue that the changes they made in terms of secondary skills and whatever gave you more flexibility to create a barbarian-like character using pure flavor. Because the secondary proficiencies were bolted on late in the AD&D first edition period, but they were core in the second edition period, where you could pick things like survival and fire building and that sort of thing as as your secondary skills. So you could make just a fighter to be more like a barbarian simply by using those flavor points. And equally, you could probably have a ranger be a barbarian. because of their light armor, their nimbleness. It fits in with the idea of a barbarian being lightly armored, and certainly with weapon specializations, slap two-handed sword weapon specialization with a strong ranger, and you've got you've got a fairly versatile class that can fit a barbarian mold.
I'm going to ask you a question here because you're right for that. The class did not exist, did it? When players,
It was added.
It was a kit. Yeah,
it was added through the kits.
Yeah. So at this point, the second edition barbarian
could be any class. Yeah, you could theoretically have a wizard from a barbarian.
Yeah, because the
tribe.
barbarians book had barbarian kits for everybody, for all classes. It had like the tribal shaman and the da-da-da. It was treated as a culture rather than a class.
Yes.
But they could also do that because they had the more robust, like you were saying, the more robust non-weapon proficiency system. So you didn't have to have a class who could do the nifty things.
Well,
I think that's a better way of doing it, personally.
Yeah, because they still built the prohibitions against magic and stuff and the superstitions into some of the kits.
Into the kit. Because I think, because I'm playing like Baldur's Gate, or I haven't played in a while, or a couple weeks, I should say. But I know that when you chose the fighter, you could be a berserker or a barbarian, if I remember correctly. Like, were they separate kits or what? Because like my knowledge of second edition is quite limited.
I believe so.
The Baldur's Gate game didn't exactly skew perfectly to the core system.
No. Yeah, it was close. It was close enough, from what I've been told, that it's not perfect, but it's fairly accurate from what I've been told.
AD&D essentially treated the barbarian and the berserker as different things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
The idea of the berserk barbarian is a later thing in D&D.
Yeah. Especially third edition.
So I mean that's pretty much hit second edition and summed it up pretty quickly in that you could create a barbarian due to the flexibility of the core non-weapon proficiencies, and as we mentioned, the Complete Barbarians book. I've not read it, and it does. I mean, I've not read a lot of particularly good reviews of it, but the idea of having as a culture with shamanistic tendencies and whatever for other classes, that sounds about right to me. And then you could create a campaign on that and have a more rounded party, but a party in which you are all barbarians, but with different styles. And that's fine, buddy. Absolutely fine.
I think that was fun because you could have a barbarian party.
Yes.
Yeah.
Third edition, I know nothing about the barbarian. I don't know where it came in, what it was a version of. I know nothing about it whatsoever. I'm afraid.
It was its own thing, really. They tapped into the rage concept, so that all barbarians were effectively berserkers, and you had rage as an expendable resource. I always felt it was dumb, but it became the staple. Other than that, they were just basically a wild fighter style class, and they're pretty similar in fifth ed as well.
I don't know anything about fourth edition, but I do know about the fifth edition barbarian. And I had a bit of knockback when I did my fifth edition amendments, because when I first did my document and whatever, I specifically said, and it's a word we've used before, in this less than 5 minutes ago, I specifically said in my write-up for the barbarian, my changes, the barbarian is a culture rather than a class. Thus, I wouldn't in fifth edition, I will not allow barbarians to multi-class, and it must be treated by the player as being a culture, a way of life, and it has to be role played as such. And I was I'm very strict on that. But what I don't like about some of the fifth edition versions of the barbarian is how many of them have powers that feel magical.
Yeah,
that's fifth ed in a nutshell.
The ancestral guardian alone, the first one you get where you can talk to the spirits of your ancestor. That I could justify as that makes sense. but like, oh, I'm just going to summon the spirits of my ancestors to shield me and my party. It's like, what are you, a fucking necromancer? Like,
yeah, and they have honed it on
calling on your ancestors and stuff. Does not get into necromancer territory.
No, but it literally summons their spirit. It's not like metaphor. No, it as in the sense of it literally summons them up to protect your party members. It's not like
which is tried and true in tribal societies.
Hell, that's Catholic, dude. I mean, that's not
that's Native American. That is that's African. That's that is so many different. That's South American. That's there. Any kind of ancestor tradition is is literally calling on your ancestors to fight for you. It may. I mean, that's not necromancy. It's
no. Yeah, that's not necromancy. That's just like calling. That's like your paladin calling up on their.
It's like a cleric summoning a Holy Spirit.
Yeah, it's the saint. It's just like a saint. That's the way they view it. It's not.
Is your cleric being a necromancer because he casts spiritual hammer or whatever
Well, if you literally summon the spirits of the dead, I would say probably yeah.
The difference is in treating and asking or forcing.
Well, in D&D, necromancers are generally raising the dead.
Or stealing the power from the negative material plane to fuel the fuel a corpse.
Yeah. See, whenever you're calling your ancestor, you're calling them back from wherever they are.
I've argued for a long time that you could thematically play a good aligned necromancer by saying he asks for help. Like, spirits of the dead, please come back to your body. I need some help here. Yeah.
Well, personally, I never saw why necromancy was viewed as evil. Anyway,
but considering a lot of the healing spells are categorized as necromancy.
Well, actually, El makes a good point. El actually makes a very...
Yeah. Anyways,
tangent.
Yeah, it's an interesting philosophical discussion for sure, right? But in terms of the barbarian class, I'm torn on the culture versus the class option. I don't mind the class option, but I really wish it was something specific. Like I said, when we're talking the first ed one, like I make it specifically the barbarian class is a spirit warrior within a culture, as opposed to this is the default, right? These are the rare chosen, as opposed to everybody's like this. And I would say the same for fifth ed, because you get a certain level of powers. It's like, maybe these should be the chosen warriors of their tribes, as opposed to the default. Oh, everybody's like this. I really hate rage as a mechanic that you can flick on and off. That's the one thing. Like, I don't mind, you've got the berserker and they can tap into their rage, but why is it a default for everybody?
Yeah, I think that goes back to second edition when they had the Berserker kit, because that was the first time you ever had a barbarian character that could rage.
But the Berserkers, but that's still a very specific choice.
Exactly.
It's not the default.
Here's the thing. I don't have a problem with the Berserker being able to turn it off, like turning it on at will. Because
I'm in an uncontrollable rage. Hold on, let me turn it off.
No. I'm about to get to that. What I have a problem with is not only can they turn it off at will, but they can control themselves while they rage.
In the rage.
Yeah, in third ed, like the half ogre barbarians, they literally if they don't have an enemy target, guess what? They're going to attack their allies. So they can make an attack. Step, if they kill it, they can step and make another attack. And if it's all allies next to them, then they're just going to keep attacking until there's nothing left to attack.
That's a whole first edition with things like Berserking Sword and things like that.
But in
Berserking in first edition was that you.
Are we on third or fifth yet? I'm not sure.
I was just looping back. I was just looping back to third as an example.
We jumped the fourth edition Shark, and we're
because we don't know
so much arguing back.
Yeah. I was just giving an example that they kind of got it right in third, but then immediately forgot about it in fifth, because when you're in fifth, you can just control yourself, and not only that, you can't even be dominant. Certain ones can't even be dominated while they rage.
No,
which is that makes even less sense. You think that if you're so in the throes of passion, you'd be easier to manipulate, but No, that's just me.
Well, no. It's mind control. Well, the mind control in 5th is really bad anyway compared to your.
Yeah.
It's not good. I mean, my biggest hang-up, I suppose, with 5th edition and the way the barbarian is treated is that whole cultural thing. For me, and I'm showing my old school roots here, I think of classes as professions, and that's where the barbarian stands differently. I don't think of classes at all, and I can't do this. I don't think of classes as collections of powers, but that's what people tend to think of nowadays. Your class is a collection of powers that you. Whereas I think of it as,
I think dip in like a buffet to take the one you want.
I'm going to say that much as for me, classes are not professions. They are roles within the party because the profession is what you make money off. You know that would be normally what you do whenever you're not trying to kill stuff. But anyway, they're party roles as well. But in terms of the way you learn them, they're like learning a profession. Whereas the barbarian,
a vocation. We'll say it's a vocation. Would probably be better.
Whereas the barbarian gets this from the culture, their upbringing, the background, and their general nature.
Well, the problem I have with the barbarian, and I played one in 5th, was I would go around and there were certain times of, okay, this is good for a minute or so, but I remember going, okay, if you fall, I'm like, okay, if I fall, then I want to activate my barbarian power. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, if we're a couple thousand feet, it's going to take me more than a segment to hit the ground. I'm going to rage. And
oh my god, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, and you take half damage from the fall.
Oh my god.
You're just really mad at gravity.
And the other
well, I mean, I think we're all going to be mad. If we're falling like 10,000 feet, we're all going to be really mad at gravity. So
if you want to visualize that scene, think First Blood, the very first Rambo movie, where the guy's sniping at Rambo and he jumps off the cliff face and he's like screaming all the way down, and then he hits the trees. And it's like, there you go. He's raging.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's funny that this schmuck gets to do that, but nobody else does. Like that's where it kind of disconnects for me.
That's because he's got that berserker rage going on. Come on.
I mean, to be fair, my DM's like, oh, you would have died. No, I would have raged because we were falling off. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah. He of course, he didn't like that, but I saved myself by grabbing onto a harpy and then trying to drag her to her death. Anyway, well, we wanted an airship. We jumped off the airship. I failed my mental roll twice, because the first one I ran to the edge, and then I failed the second time, and I asked the GM, because you're supposed to go towards the harpy singing. I said, can I just jump towards her? He's like, yeah. As like, oh my love. Ah!
One of my other issues with the 5th edition version of the barbarian, I mean, I've said before, one of the problems with me with 5th edition combat is the whole, everything feels like a sack of hit points. Everything's so much easier to hit. Hit point bloat is a thing. And eventually it feels like you're just whittling down hit points. And the barbarian is the class that typifies that, in that they get bags of hit points. Their armor class isn't great, so they're just there in the middle of combat, being hit, constantly whittling down this sack of hit points.
And they take half damage.
Yeah. And that's assuming that nobody's healing them as well. That's assuming the cleric is going healing word.
Well, the other part is and I used to, because I took the bear totems, when you start taking the totems, because when you talk 5th edition, you also have to talk subclasses. And the subclass is, okay, when you get high enough level, you can basically fly up into the sky. I mean, it feels more like Exalted at this point, but you can fly up into the sky to attack something and then, come back
and you start falling. Yeah, you can't stay up there, but yeah. It's like that Samurai Jack quote. You can fly? No, just jump good.
Jump good.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that. I love that show. The show is so good.
Yeah.
I'm currently rewatching it, but let's not get off.
Yeah, don't watch. It's not gonna.
The 5th season's my favorite for Samurai Jack. Well, come on, blood and everything.
No, we're not. No, I'm not getting it. That's just going to make me go on a tangent. I'm not getting into it. It's too much hard.
Yes, when we're talking samurais, we'll reference Jack. But
Yes. Actually,
although the Scotsman is a barbarian, so
wait. Speaking of which, because this is one that Geek's not familiar with, and we're talking about class that disappeared. Let's talk about the Bushi and Samurai in Oriental Adventures.
I don't know enough about it.
Well, I mean, Oriental Adventures had its own set of core classes. Bushi,
yeah,
Samurai, Bujin, Shugenja.
Did they have the ninja, or is that a second end?
Ninja was in there.
Ninja.
Ninja was a hard one to run because you couldn't actually let the other players know you were a ninja.
No, you're a ninja. Yeah, I think you were saying that. Yeah, and if they found out, well, you stopped being a ninja.
See, I would
you lost all your honor.
Well, wait a minute. The Bushi was great because their specialty is that they could go up 2 levels for a brief amount of time.
Yeah, and then they had the Kensai. The Kensai in there was a weird class. It was like almost like the
weapon.
It was the Oriental Adventures version of the Paladin. It was the sword.
Essentially, it was like they were like weapon. They were weapon masters or something like that.
Yeah, no, duelists. Their key thing is the duelist. They're looking for the great one-on-one challenge.
The Jitsu skill.
Yeah, no. I actually, they're Kensai and what was the other one? Kensai is the one class I allow from Oriental Adventures in my AD&D campaign. So I will say, because
Elle did ask this earlier, and since we are like going into the Oriental stuff, that Geek might be able to talk about. Let's transition into the monk.
Oh yeah,
we have time.
We have some time.
We don't have time to. We don't have time to do it on this stream.
So assuming we're going to give the next 3 classes their due, then it's best to save them.
We have Cavalier.
Cavalier, Bard, and Monk. We really need to cover.
Don't forget the Acrobat.
We did that with the thief. So
we also talked about the Ranger and the Paladin and Fighter. So
not so much, not as much depth.
No.
We got those 3 classes left to cover in a fortnight's time when we do our next version of this stream. So I think
I have opinions on the Monk. But yeah, I'll be.
So we have.
The Monk was a great character that you couldn't get past like 5th level, and once he was up there, it's like, oh, you're so kick-ass. You look at the end result. To get there is what was the problem.
Yeah.
See, that's where I disagree. Like the Monk, even at low levels, can have its niche and its uses. So, but that's
Stunning Strike, man. That's Stunning Strike, dude. But anyway,
I will say that as much as people dislike it, or seem to dislike it, Critical Role, at least in the animated series they did for it, managed to actually pull off a non-Oriental iteration of a monk. Still doing all the monk stuff. They just gave him Norse themes and Norse fantasy themes, and had him in his little temple doing the same stuff any other monk would do. But
I know the character you're talking about. Yeah, I know the character you're talking about. Yeah.
But
I'd love to see more stuff like that.
These are all good topics for 2 weeks' time.
Right now we're on rambling time now, so we can talk about whatever we want.
So wait
into
for
rambling
time.
Ramble.
I'll mention a little bit more about the Oriental Adventures. Bushi was the only character class besides Thief where you had unlimited levels for no matter what your race was.
Really?
The Bushi was just the Oriental Adventures fighter. That's why.
Yeah. Well, but the fighter wasn't in the player's handbook. Is my point. So that's what I'm referring to.
Right. But the Oriental Adventures also had different non-human options, right?
Is that how you would pronounce it?
Bushi. Yeah, Bushi.
Spirit Oak.
The first ever judo club in Britain was I don't know. There was a judo club near me, and they called themselves Bushai.
Well, maybe it is.
Bushai. Oh no, it's Bushi. No, the word like it derives from. Yeah, it's like Bushido. Yeah, Bushido. It means like that.
Is the word for warrior in Japanese.
Yeah, so like Bushido means way of the warrior or warrior's
Speaking
way.
Of not a class, samurai is a cultural status, not a class. You're technically
it's
samurai. You're
the same.
Bushi.
It's like a knight. Anybody can be knighted.
It's like knight. Yeah.
But
well, not even like knight isn't even just something.
Though.
Well, cavaliers. I mean that.
Well, not even. No. Samurai did not have to be warriors. They were just a
fighting samurai was a samurai bushi.
Oh yeah, then yeah.
He is samurai by his social class. and then a bushi
but he's also bushi
by his fighting.
So it's actually funny.
One thing we didn't
go for.
Oh, good.
Okay, no, you keep. If
It's your stream, dude. Go.
It's your stream, dude. Go.
One thing that's just randomly sprung to mind. Something I completely forgot. One take on the Paladin going back on the stream that I didn't mind was the Knights of Solamnia in Dragonlance.
Were they Paladins or were they considered just Cavaliers in that?
That's
I think Lord
argument. They were
there's probably a mix. It's probably a mix. They're all knights. They're all warriors, but maybe like Sturm probably would have been a paladin.
Was that Soth's order? Because I think Soth was a paladin. If I remember, because he was a devoted to the silver.
I think Soth was a knight of Solamnia.
He was a knight of the rose. He was a knight of the red rose. Yeah, and he was a paladin, if I remember.
I've literally not read Dragonlance in 40 years, so don't trust my memory.
Well, let's see.
Wait, so you're over 40, Sean? I thought you were like 35 or something.
No, I'm turning 50.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, let's look at what they have here. You have Knights of the Crown, Knights of the Sword, Knights of the Rose, and they were basically their own character classes. Once you hit that certain level, but what was the? I'm trying to look at what you had to do. You had to take your oath. I'm trying to see what it. As we're going through this very quickly, what you had to actually do to join them. And I think that Paladins and Fighters could join it, couldn't they?
Possibly, but yeah, I know that. I know that.
And it also kind of depends on where in Dragonlance you're coming into too, as well. So.
I'm looking at 1E right now. So
was Dragonlance 1E? I thought it was 2E.
No.
Dragonlance was 1E, and then
really.
The book.
Yeah. Yes.
Well. Yeah, there's the book right there. That I'm having.
Came out in like 82 or 83.
Well, no. Dragonlance came out in 85, 86?
85, okay.
Yeah.
But in the mid-80s. Yeah, mid-80s.
Okay, so let's see what it says is... so I guess you had to do you had to do Knights of the Crown. So that was its own class. You had to do the Knight of the Crown.
Knight of the Clown.
Yeah, well, like that. So anyway, what it says is that they're variants of Cavaliers, and only
I kind of would too.
And then you go to Knights of the Sword, which is the option from going there, and then you had the ability to get cleric spells, or you could go Knights of the Rose.
The highest of the orders, which is what Soth
that was always weird to me because it always seemed to me that would have, especially in AD&D context, that they should have why didn't they just write that up as different level titles for a class,
Because I don't think that you had to pick. You didn't have to go up. You could have stayed in that same order.
I know.
So that was.
I think it was like a degree of martial supremacy or dedication that you got. Like they were like rings of influence. Like the outer ring is.
They were definitely going a Knights Templar kind of an angle. You would basically graduate to and go into different like sub orders within the order. Clearly,
like there's the Teutonic Knights, the Knights Hospitaller, and the Knights Templar. It just depends.
Those are all kind of separate groups. I'm saying with each order though, you'd have novice and then brother and then da 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 da.
Right. Knight Commander and then Lieutenant.
Cool fantasy names.
And once you start getting into there, you said okay, but that's one of these things that you look at, but. Unlike a lot of it, and this is why I think they actually did a good job with this, and I wish that 5e had done something. You had to go on your quest. You had to go do certain parts. You couldn't just say, "Oh, I'm at 4th level. I'm going to go over here." They're like, "Nope. You got to prove your worth. You got to go through the whole." It's very similar to the druids and the monks. You couldn't just gain levels. You had to do something to gain those levels on top of experience.
Yeah, they're having fun with classes, and I can respect that.
You're beholden to an order too, and that's licensed for the DM to say, okay, your superior is sending you here, you have to go there.
Yeah. Well, and you couldn't go any higher than 13th level until someone vacated the position. so the same thing with the High Warrior. So you're still limited. Basically, it says it has to be vacated, which means either the person steps down or that they have to die, and you're not the one causing it. So,
I mean, you could duel them to prove that you're more competent than they are. You could do that.
Yeah, but that's not the way it works. I mean, that's like saying I'm going to duel the 50-year-old, sitting behind.
Yeah, and you're talking about an organization here. It's like I challenge you to a duel. No. go do your homework. It's like, what are you gonna do? Kill him and then face the rest of the order?
No, I'm not even. No, I mean not even kill him. I mean just like it's
I know, but I'm just saying, like, challenge it.
Yeah.
The thing that people often forget, especially in role-playing games, I always find it funny. I'm going to challenge him to a duel. Well, depending on the culture, he's under no obligation to accept. I challenge you to a duel for the rights to your kingdom. No.
Well, actually, you have to be elected. Here's the other part: you have to be elected to that position.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Right here it says the High Clerist is a position that's held by only one knight at a time. When the need arises a new High Clerist, he must be elected during a proper knightly council. Should anyone do this, let's see, vice level, he may do so, but still remains the title of Clerist until the High Clerist position is vacant. So really, actually, it sounds like you can get the levels, you just can't get the title.
Okay. Yeah, it's like if it was just like, it's kind of why I brought up the duel. It's like the same thing with the druid, the monk, and the assassin. It's like you can only get that high if you duel them, sometimes to the death.
Yes.
And if it's just like, at least there you could say, I'm not going to progress that further because I don't want to risk my character. But like, if it's like, no, you can't even advance unless you get elected, I'm like, I don't like that. I really don't like that.
By the time you're playing 13th level, you should be playing a very political, real domain style game.
Oh yeah. By that point, the domain level play stuff has set in at that point.
I mean, that kind of stuff is I think what's missing from a lot of newer games. Period.
Yeah.
Is just the stuff built into the classes to inspire adventures and campaigns.
Elfbait's cast invisibility on himself.
I have.
Yeah, it's like like I said, in Sword and Wizardry, it's baked into the Paladin and the Ranger that they get a stronghold at 9th level.
Ooh, I'm invisible.
Well, you attack something, dude, and revealed.
It could be worse. He could be doing Order of the Stick invisibility.
It could be worse. It could have shown up on camera naked, like in Mystery Man. You can't see me.
Oh yeah, Mystery. Oh god, Mystery Man. That film was so good. It's so good.
But no. I mean, a lot of the older games had stuff built in to inspire adventure. One of my big gripes about the lack of character lethality and character danger is like having a party member die wasn't the end of that character. That was an invitation to the rest of the party. No. That was an invitation to the rest of the party to find somebody who could revive them, or go, do that quest for the person who could manage the resurrection or the reincarnation spell or whatever. It was an opening to adventure and campaign. The low power level relative to the world, even at high levels for characters in older versions, were invitations to go on quests to get the tools to accomplish the great deeds.
I'm going to mention one other thing, though.
Oh shit! Our 15th level paladin, his soul got taken against his will by a higher demon. Guess we're going to hell, boys.
Or you're going to find a priest that's powerful enough to can drag him back, or you're going to go do something for the gods to save him, or
Well, here's the other part: is when you start looking at it, is lethality was high enough at the low levels that it wasn't worth resurrecting those characters. But once you start getting up to 7th, 8th, 9th, you're going
9th, 10th level, yeah.
I mean, 7th level, especially if you have a high lethality like Mage's Musings has done. What's the highest level so far? I don't give anything away, for what's been going on.
OSC, my OC game, the highest level is 3.
Okay, so
in the Night Below game, the highest character is 5th.
Okay,
that's been a low mortality game. The Night Below game, they've been playing smart. So.
But I mean, but they've been playing smart for that. Well, at the first few levels, if they die, you're just like, create a new character. Not
a new guy, yeah.
Yeah, but once you start getting up to 7th, you're like, well, wait a minute, I put in a few months into this.
Yeah, I have some good magic items, some pretty decent magical swag, and I've gotten some standing with the church or the standing with the Thieves Guild. I don't want to get smoked. Fuck
I think
that.
It also comes down to your group, obviously, like anything, because sometimes hey, we really like the thief, we want to go save him, even though he is only 4th level.
The other part is, we all forget about just like I saw at the beginning of the stream where someone's talking about the dump stat of charisma. What a waste. I went, hold on here. After Mage Musings has brought out just on how important that charisma is, if you play with it.
It has to be used. That's just I've played with so many DMs who just hand wave it away.
Yeah.
They arbitrarily make NPC reaction decisions. I'm like, well, you're just nerfing anybody who chooses to use charisma.
Well, but I mean, as far as money was spent, is okay. I'm going to raise my retainers. I'm going to raise my, my God, if your 5th level henchman goes over and goes, you know what? I follow him. Why? Because you resurrected me when I was 3rd level. You're like, oh, okay. So you inspire that aspect.
Well, and even mechanically, at least in first ed, there's that's actually a category that increases loyalty. If you've brought them back from the dead, that adds something like 30% to the loyalty rating. That's massive.
That's insane. And if you put on top of that, like the insanely high charisma on top of that, that's like what nearly.
Yeah,
if like the 17 charisma, it's like it like goes like from 80% to like what 99 or something.
Really screw up if somebody, like I told you about the Paladin in our game, has his henchman has a loyalty of 170. He would really have to screw up before the loyalty broke.
At that point, you could probably stab your hireling, and he'd still go. He's a nice guy, and he brings me cookies.
No, it's like I know. You know what? I shouldn't have said. I shouldn't have insulted his mother. I shouldn't have insulted his mother.
Dead.
It was
he
really
could have
me.
killed me, but he didn't.
And Tony, he laid his hand upon me afterwards to say he was sorry. It was a heat of the moment. He didn't mean it. It's all good. It's all copacetic.
Well, but I mean, when you look at it, and I know Major Muse's talking about, boy, when you get those retainers and they have that high loyalty, my
They
God,
stick with you. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to torture him for information. Well, he won't speak ill of you. He won't do this. And you're starting to get this whole aspect of, okay, well, what are we going to do? Well, if the Paladin has to hold that one area in the corner, that's critical, he can plug that gap because his people won't leave him. And people forget about that because I think that we all did this for the most part. We didn't play with retainers and henchmen like we should have when we were young.
Or here's even the thing: when the paladin is the character who has to go out when someone demands if the paladin is they say, Paladin, come out, we're gonna kill you because you fucked with our plans, and he has to do it. The villagers are gonna be so moved by his honor and his virtue, they're probably just going to take up arms to keep him alive because we are not letting this guy die. It's like, fuck this.
Well, and then what you do is, if you're a smart DM, you go, the Paladin will be locked up because we don't want martyrs. We don't want these things. Even it's the classic thing of I am Spartacus. Which one's the
a dead paladin is a martyr, a live paladin is a prisoner, and that like what elves say, that gives it incentive to bust him out of jail.
Watching Mage's Musings games or watching his recaps and stuff, I really wish that my players and I back in the day paid attention to hirelings and charisma and stuff, because there were never hirelings except for maybe a lantern bearer or something like that when we went into dungeons. We didn't even catch the fact that there was that expectation that you're going to have a whole bunch of henchmen and stuff with you.
Yeah, playing as a kid, I never did either.
So we were playing those dungeons on hard level, I guess, because there were like probably half as many of us as there's supposed to be.
Please tell me you guys didn't go through Tomb of Horrors without. Please tell me you didn't.
We did. I mean, we died, but we played it.
Yeah.
We played it like it said you're supposed to, where you're not supposed to take your actual regular characters.
And like I said, I view Tomb of Horrors as a terrible book. One, it was boring. It's a DM. And there's not
Tomb of Horrors is great. Honestly, it doesn't get said, but Tomb of Horrors is really good for one thing, and that is showing the potential of things that you can put in dungeons.
Yeah.
If nothing else, it is like the first Grimtooth's Trap book. In that it shows all these creative ways to play around with a dungeon environment. If by itself, it's like reading a text on some sort of on any kind of like science or engineering bit. Like, it's kind of blah, and it probably isn't the greatest thing on its own. But once you start applying what you learned from it in other places, then you can get some creative and interesting things.
Like, right? what I even came up with an idea is like 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 the whole sphere of annihilation thing. Like most people are experienced enough to know that if you put up a torch against a sphere of annihilation and it doesn't illuminate properly, they're going to notice that. They're going to notice, well, the light isn't being fed in like it would naturally around corners and stuff.
But is it a sphere of annihilation or is it a darkness spell?
That's the thing. What I would do to be really kind of sadistic is
did the tip of my torch
have a
go?
trap. But you throw it in, you don't hear the clank. It's like, oh, it's a sphere. But what I'm gonna do is like underneath a trap door about 60 feet down, where they shine the torch, and the torch's like, oh, the light's going in, so it's not darkness, it's not a sphere of annihilation, and they go down, and they don't. Dave isn't coming back, and then they pull the rope back up. It's like, yeah, the rope is just cut, and like
Well, see, the whole thing we're looking at is you have a 10-foot pole, which which was kind of standard after a lot of these. You put it in the hole, and if you pull it out and it's missing a section, like, don't put your hand.
Don't go in there.
Yeah.
But that's why I said put it 60 feet down a trap door. That way they can't do that.
Seth Skorkowski brought up a good point on his discussion on the sphere. He's like, people because he's talking about how he finds that a lot of people's recountings of the going through the adventure are kind of full of bullshit, because and we just kept feeding character after character, and there's I'm pretty sure after the first guy goes in head first and then falls limp because his brain goes away, you're going to know something's wrong. It's not like they're just walking in there and they're continuing to be able to crawl in despite their head going away.
And then but if we went foot first in and we didn't notice all the blood we were losing, I'm pretty sure that if you put your foot into a sphere of annihilation, you're gonna fucking feel it.
All the blood is pumping out into.
No,
well, it doesn't matter. You put your hand in first.
My point is, his point was you're going to know that something's wrong. So these stories that you hear about people feeding an entire party into the green devil face are ridiculous and probably not.
I'm gonna bring up one other point though, which is back to DK stuff about the 60 foot. If you have a sphere of annihilation, that's where you're throwing away trash. You're not even using
that's what I mean. Yeah,
you're not even using it as a trap. You're just like, oh, what am I going to do with this refuse? That's what it really becomes. And
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, but some people would also I would say they'd eventually start weaponizing it as a trap. They say, the goblins will say, oh, there's a trap door down there with lots of treasure and cake and candy and ice cream.
No,
not quite like that.
Well, the goblins are just probably going, we throw something down there, it never comes back. Well, the other part is it could be interdimensional too. That's the other. It's it's
a portable hole.
Well, no. I mean, when I say interdimensional, is you don't like a gate spell. Which plane? You go is it doesn't matter if you're low enough level. It's like you're not coming back. What happened?
I think the fun way to do it, Green Devil Face, would be to put a polymorph spell in there. It was okay, you crawl into it, now you're changed into something else.
A goat.
You're a hermit crab.
Actually, you know what my favorite would be is that it starts becoming a funhouse mirror thing, and you have to fight off doppelgangers that come out of the mirrors.
Yeah. There's a D&D monster for that already. It's called a fetch, and those are horrible.
There's the Aliax as well in Fiendfolia.
Yeah, fetches are gnarly because only the person that they're after can see them too. So if you look into a reflection, you see yourself looking back at you. It comes out and starts pursuing you, but only you can see it. So the rest of the party's like, "Why the hell are you freaking out?" It's like, "Don't you see it?"
like a more disturbing version of the Revenant.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there.
I put one of those in one of my dungeons. They have to go through a crystal cavern where the dwarves have been mining out this giant geode of diamond, and in the reflections of the crystals, there's a fetch waiting, because the fetches are extra dimensional. They look through mirror surfaces anywhere in the world, and so they're already fighting little crystal elemental things in there, and then there's a fetch. So if one of them just happens to catch a glance into one of those mirror surfaces, not only are they in the middle of a fight against these little elemental critters from from the elemental plane of Earth, then one player starts freaking out because this thing is after him and nobody else can see him.
So, Geek, John, what is next week's topic?
I haven't come up with it yet.
Okay. And so then 2 weeks we're going to do what? The Cavalier, the Monk, and the Druid?
No, we did the Druid with the Bard. We're doing the Bard.
Yeah, the Bard.
Cavalier, Monk, and Bard in 2 weeks.
Okay.
But next week's I haven't come up with yet because I'm just focusing this week on the sort of extra bits and bobs I'm throwing in for sort of the anniversary. That's been my focus this week. I'll think about next week's topic over the weekend.
And if I didn't say before,
Friday night.
Happy anniversary, Geek. Happy anniversary.
Thank you. So we're going to be wrapping up soon. But Mage, can you please shill Friday for me?
Yes, everybody who's still listening, Friday night's alternative to Geek's usual Fighting Fantasy Friday is going to be Drinking Quest Friday. So I'm going to be, and I use air quotes here, dungeon mastering Geek, Saxious, and Squirrel Helmet so far through a game of Drinking Quest. So basically, it's a TTRPG light game where everybody will have their character. They'll draw random scenarios, and the characters will have to either fight a monster or make a saving throw. If their character dies, they have to chug their drink. So
yes,
we'll see who wins.
We have a potential fourth player, but he hasn't yet joined or hasn't made himself known on Discord yet, and that's Daniel from our regular Friday night stream. So Daniel, if you do watch this stream back tomorrow, please confirm and get in touch because you have that spot open to you. But we may have to fill it with somebody else if you don't. If we can get somebody else to join us. Does it play okay with 3 or do we really need 4?
Ideally, we want the full table. I mean, if worst comes to worst, if we don't get the 4th, I'll just take the 4th and we'll figure out how to manipulate. That's why I'll meet with you and Saxious and Squirrel Hermit and we'll do a just quick tutorial.
When do you want to do that meetup?
I guess tomorrow would be best. That way we can be ready for Friday.
Saxious's game is running from 8 o'clock tomorrow my time. Normally about 8 till 10:30ish.
So that's 3 for me. So if you guys are okay to meet up, say 7, because it won't take long. I just need to go over a couple of things.
I can be online beforehand. I can certainly be online beforehand. So
we'll ask Oscar and Squirrel Hermit as well.
Yeah.
If we can't get everybody together, I can try to do everybody individually as well. You and I already went over it. So all right.
Bye.
We'll catch you soon. I can go over individually if we have to, but it's best if we just get it all at once.
Yeah,
but
people talking about the Gladiator class. The only thing I really remember about the Gladiator class is there being a kit book for it in 2nd edition. I don't know anything else.
Probably the Roman stuff.
Squirrel says he's free all day tomorrow.
Excellent.
So we'll try to buzz you on Discord, Squirrel, at some point.
Well, Gene, it will be shown on stream on Friday night in place of the Fighting Fantasy stream. We're going to be doing it at 9:30 my time, which is whatever time.
4:30 Eastern Standard Time.
And we're going to be running it on Friday night. So it reminds me I do need to go to the supermarket to get a crate of beer for that. I don't know if you've actually seen.
You showed your little mini fridge there.
A little mini fridge there, specifically ready for it. There we go.
That is a really, really mini fridge.
I mean, Gene, if you want to play, you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome if you want to have that 4th spot.
Catches, you got to be on camera, and you're going to be chugging on camera.
Yes, that is the key. You've got to be willing to be on camera and make a fool of yourself, downing beers in front of the internet. And it has been put out on Twitter on someone's account who has 100,000 followers.
Hasn't been yet. I just checked, but I did email him.
He hasn't done it yet.
No, I sent him the link. He hasn't done it yet. The guy who created the game.
Oh, right.
Jason Anarchy. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I didn't play 2nd edition Dark Sun. I've only played a modified later version with a different rule system. So that's going on for the Gladiator thing. I played I liked the setting played with a different rule set in the later edition. But I didn't play it in 2nd edition time because it came out after I'd sort of finished with D&D for a while. But yes, that's the plan for Friday. The mage is running the stream, and I am a mere player. And I expect to have a hangover on Saturday morning.
You may only have to have 8 drinks.
Now, well, see,
We haven't come up with those rules yet, Al.
Well, this is going to make it interesting because we have the thing.
Gene says he has no camera.
No camera,
Chaosium.
just headphones and mic.
So Chaosium, when you have your, that will be interesting this weekend, then, John.
Yeah. I'm going to be revising the next bit of the adventure we're playing with a thick head on Saturday morning.
I doubt it. You're not likely to have 8 drinks. The standard rule is if you get killed, you drink, you chug your drink. We're playing the safe version, so if you have to chug a second time, then you only take a couple of sips. But I'm going to go over this with everybody. We're going to have a special rule where you have to drink a second drink. And if we want, we can add a super chat rule where the super chat can make you drink.
Yeah, we could do that.
That might get dangerous though, because hunger.
Yeah. I will point out. Oh, go for it.
I said you just have to set it for $50 or $100. So.
It's got to be high. Yeah. But I think for this go at least, let's leave the super chat option to force people to drink it out.
Well, it's an optional rule.
If people like it, if people react well to it and want to do it again, then we can.
This is very much like a feeler, isn't it? Putting the feelers out, just a test to play.
But within context of the game, one of the characters that can be chosen does have the ability to make another character drink, and so that will override the drink limit per quest because that's their special ability. And any character within game can sacrifice some XP they've earned to make another character drink, and we will also use that one.
And there is a character whose special ability is to headbutt other things in the nuts.
Yes.
What's the fastest you can chug a drink, Geek? I'm just curious. What's the fastest?
Well, it depends on the drink.
And I mean an alcoholic
like a shot glass, you can slag right back down.
No. It's got to be beer or cider, lager. Thing like that.
I've never been the sort of person who's able to just pour a pint down my throat. I've met people who can do a pint in about 2 or 3 seconds by just going gone.
Yeah, I got it in 5. I got mine in 4 or 5 seconds with great effort. Wasn't the smartest decision I ever made.
He doesn't have to chug a bottle of rum, but like Saxius might have a rum and Coke. He'll have to chug that, and then so he'll put a shot. Do you want
to kill him?
Well, here's the problem, though. If it's clear, how can you tell if it's alcohol versus water?
Well,
it's Scout's honor. How can you tell if it's cider or just apple juice? It's Scout's honor.
I can do a pint of a smooth ale in about 7 or 8 seconds.
That's not bad.
There's no time limit on how fast you have to.
No, you have to do it in under
so
a
everybody
second.
Can see. Yeah.
You have to chug the whole thing in one go. That's the rule.
And I think we may have a special penalty for anybody who has to run to the bathroom.
Oh, no, I'm the oldest. I'm in trouble.
Oh, no. Are you 50, Geek?
Oh, no, I think Squirrel might be older than me. Squirrel, how's the bladder? How's the bladder, Squirrel?
I love it. This five grognards in their 50s playing a drinking game. Hilarious.
No, hold it. Squirrel might be mutated, so he might not have to go at all.
You never know.
Boy, you never know.
Well, he's next to the Palestine, Ohio, where they had the, yeah,
right. The fucking train crash.
Yeah,
right.
He's within a mile of that. So yeah, I'm glad he's still doing okay and everything, but I still am going to tease him for the entire time for that.
He may well appear on stream with 3 heads,
2 heads,
and
2 heads and 5 arms, and
he's very solid with his bladder.
Well, 3 stomachs. He's just like, well, that's one. Got 2.
Yeah, that's 2. But we'll figure it out. So yes, Friday, 4:30 Eastern Standard, 9:30 Greenwich Mean Time.
Yeah,
the Geek does drinking quest.
Not just me, though. We're all doing it. We're all doing it. Anyway, it's come to the point where I'm going to say thank you to everybody. Be sure to check out the channels of everybody who has been involved here tonight. Mage's Musings, Elfbait, and there are people in chat who have channels as well. I can see Squirrel there. Squirrel Hermit has a channel called Squirrel Hermit. And I'm scrolling up a little bit.
Shadow and Sun was here.
Shadow and Sun's been here, yes.
Hungar was here.
Hungar the Servarian.
Yeah. I believe DM James popped in for a moment.
He's now known as the Elite Gamer.
And we had the Crafting Gamer as well. He's got a channel. So
of course, we have to send Crafting. Of course, we have to, because he did that wonderful donation of the membership.
He did. And we have had all these donations. Great generosity from people. It's been... Wait! Before we close the stream, everyone here, just to help the algorithm further, smash that like and subscribe. Share it around. Share the love. And cheers, Mike. Cheers, Mike. Yes, I always enjoy listening to the debate on semantics. Yes, of course, that's what happens. Yeah, when two Spurgs and 3 grogs of equal stubbornness meet, semantics are going to be had. It's likely that some of the grogs are undiagnosed Spurgs as well. Let's face it. It's okay, Omen. We still love you.
No, I mean, I just look at it and like, I just view that as normal. So I'm saying, like, well, I have this diagnosis. I'm like, no, you're just a little bit on the outlier edge, and that's because I look at it, unless someone's, because everyone, well, except DK there. Everyone has, normal things. No. Yeah. I'm not normal. I'm just right. Sorry, Omen. Well, anyway, I'm left. The difference is that the right person's the one that dies. So. Right. We have reached pumpkin hour. I'm the shield. You're the sword. We've got 10 minutes past pumpkin hour. So I'm going to close the stream any second now. Thank you,
Good night, everybody.
And we'll see you on Friday. Bye. Bye-bye.